Hey guys, welcome to a new video. Like, comment and subscribe if you enjoy. Without any further interruptions, enjoy the What If. Chapter 13. Reunion. Kurosaki Ichigo was quite literally a blur as he shunpoed up to the trapdoor. Pushing it open, the wizard leapt up into Urahara's shop proper. Naturally, his rush meant that he made no efforts towards stealth, and the loud noise he was making alerted the residents that there was someone unexpected. Ichigo. Urahara poked his head around the corner. What are you doing here? We weren't expecting you back for at least another week. Ichigo scowled. That was before Inoue got kidnapped. I'm here to see if I can get some reinforcements before I rescue her. The shopkeeper shook his head. Ishida-kun and Sato-kun already tried, right before they left via my Garganta to Haweko Mundo. The Shinigami regiment was ordered by Yamamoto Saotaicho to return to Soul Society to prepare for Aizen's invasion. Wait, does that mean that no one's here to protect Karakura? Ichigo exclaimed, incredulous that anyone could be that stupid. It's part of the plan, Urahara told him with a sly smile. There is to be a two-front battle. Aizen is to be lured here to the living world, and a special contraption of my own design will ensure the safety of the population of Karakura while allowing all the Taicho of Soul Society to fight at their full power. No limiters. Ichigo, despite himself, was awed at the thought for a moment, imagining facing Byakuya and Kenpachi, the two Shinigami Taicho he'd actually fought, working together to kill him. They both almost killed me individually, together. He shivered involuntarily, and combined with all the other Taicho, who must be at least as strong. That's an overwhelming force. That it is. Not all the Taicho will be fighting here in Karakura, naturally, Urahara cheerfully continued. Some of them will be going to Haweko Mundo to take out the Espada there. Who will be staying in Soul Society to keep Aizen from invading in the meantime? Ichigo asked pointedly. The exiled Shinigami shook his head. From what I understand, some of the Fukuteicho will stay behind and alert us if something like that happens. In that event Soul Society's forces will retreat and take care of the threat. We cannot really afford to keep any of our Taicho back in this fight. The Espada are too strong, especially in conjunction with Aizen, Tusen and Ichimaru. Ichigo had to admit that point. Alright, sounds like you got a plan for here. I need to meet up with Ishida and Chad. Do you know where in Haweko Mundo they are? Urahara looked up and assumed a thoughtful expression. Hard to say, really, I can't know for sure, but if you take my Garganta you should end up pretty close to them. Ichigo sighed. That'll have to do. I can materialize their spirit ribbons if need be and locate them that way. Lead the way, hat in, clogs. As they got up, there was a knock on the door to the Urahara Shoten. Who could that be at this time? Urahara questioned, his voice reflecting obvious curiosity. As the shopkeeper opened the door, Ichigo was relieved to see the faces of Kuchiki Rukia and Abarai Renji. Guys. Ichigo. They looked surprised, but their faces hardened swiftly. Ichigo, have you heard? Rukia asked urgently. Yeah, Inoue's been captured, Ichigo affirmed grimly. Heard it from one of the Espada, who was acting as a messenger for Aizen. But I thought you had been ordered back to Soul Society. Ni-sama helped us back, Rukia told him. Renji grinned tightly. He said that he had been ordered to bring us back. He had no further orders to keep us there. Who knew that Kuchiki Taicho was so devious? Ichigo was stunned for a moment, before he smirked in satisfaction. Looks like Byakuya's lightened up a bit. Alright then, glad to have you along. Let's go. Follow me, Urahara ordered, leading them into the basement. A few minutes later, they were in the Garganta, making their way to Haweko Mundo in the same turbulent space between dimensions that Ichigo had just been traveling through. Where've you been, Ichigo? Renji demanded. Haweko Mundo, the orange-haired Shinigami answered shortly. Reason's a bit of a story, but we got a few minutes, so, Ichigo quickly explained his situation with Cazador, and told how he'd lost one of their fights, so Cazador had taken over and left to Haweko Mundo per their agreement to evolve as a hollow. And Cazador managed to evolve to an Ajukas relatively quickly. We made the acquaintance of a few peaceful-seeming Arankar, but then we got a message from Aizen's messenger boy, saying that Cazador had 12 hours to appear before him or Inoue would be killed. I persuaded Cazador to fight me again early, won, and came back here to gather reinforcements. You know the rest of the story. That's A lot to take in, Renji admitted. You know that we'll never tell Soul Society, of course. Rukia, who had known of a lot of this previously, was better able to continue the questioning. What's the significance of this hollow ego of yours, this Cazador de la Luna, evolving to a Jukas? Simply put, my hollow powers get a major power-up, Ichigo replied. Hollow powers. Renji swallowed the lump in his throat, thinking about just how strong Ichigo was without them. What sort of powers do you get? To my knowledge, I've got high-speed regeneration capabilities, plus a powerful boost to my strength, speed and raw power, Ichigo informed them. Not sure what else yet. Cazador'll be teaching me more later, provided there is more to teach. Rukia scoffed, as if you need any more raw power. Her insides froze as though her own Zanpakuto had turned on her as Ichigo merely gave her a haunted look. The message was clear. I need every advantage I can get. Are they really that strong? Renji queried stonily. Ichigo shook his head. Not all of them, I'm sure. The 10th Espada, Yami, is rather weak outside of his Resurrección. I could take him out with just my Shikai. According to other Espada, his Resurrección makes him the strongest of the Espada. The 7th Espada, Zamari, was fast and had the ability to go so fast he can create up to 5 clones of himself. Not sure about his actual strength. Number 6, Grimjow, was fast, but I presume was much stronger than the 7th. His Resurrección makes him faster and stronger, and he specializes in Hakuda, with his hands turned into claws. The 5th, Neutra, was incredibly strong at the expense of his speed, but also had some regeneration ability. Outside of Resurrección, he uses a halberd-type weapon, but in Resurrección he can have up to 6 arms, each of which wielding a scythe. The 4th, Ulquiorra, is ungodly fast, faster than my Bankai. I don't know anything more about him, or anything at all concerning the other Espada. Even so, that's valuable intelligence, Rukia appreciated. Thank you for the update, Ichigo. Ichigo merely nodded, sensing that they were about to encounter the dimensional boundary into the realm of hollows. Look sharp. There's a good chance we're gonna be in a fight the minute we emerge in Hueco Mundo, especially if they already detected Ishida and Chad. 2 solid nods acknowledged the advice, and then they broke through to Hueco Mundo, landing on the desert surface. A brief look around proved that neither the Quincy nor the human with hollow-like powers were anywhere nearby. Any ideas? Renji asked. Rukia pointed at Las Noches in the distance. Ichigo, is it safe to say that that structure over there is the headquarters for Aizen and his forces? Yeah, I'm certain Inoue's in there somewhere, he responded affirmatively. Ishida and Chad probably headed in that direction. Let's start running then, Renji suggested strongly. Why not just take a ride on your Bankai? Ichigo proposed. Your heightened Reiatsu will alert our friends that we're coming, to just stay put or come to us, and we can move pretty quickly. Rukia bopped him upside the head. Because if Renji uses his Bankai here, we'll have hollows swarming us in minutes. Did you forget that hollows are attracted to Reiatsu? Ichigo rubbed the spot where the midget had smacked him. Right. Sorry I asked. Besides, I'm pretty sure I can sense them in that direction. Rukia pointed towards Las Noches. They're not too far. We should be able to catch up shortly if we use Shunpo. Renji and Ichigo nodded at her, letting Rukia take point. After all, she could sense their friends far better than they could. They all disappeared in a flicker of Shunpo. Several minutes later, they heard the sounds of a fight. Ichigo picked up the pace, streaking past Rukia easily, racing up to a large sand dune blocking the way. Ishida and Chad appeared to be fighting a large sand hollow. Ichigo was only mildly surprised to see they were accompanied by Nell's group. Ichigo drew Zangetsu from his back and was about to charge a Getsuga when Rukia put a hand on his shoulder and pulled him back. It's sand. He'll just reform if you don't hit him with an elemental attack, change his composition, Rukia explained, drawing her own Zanpakuto. Allow me, dance, Soda no Shirayuki. Before Ichigo's very eyes, Rukia's sword changed into an elegant white, a long ribbon flowing out from the hilt as the short Shinigami turned Soda no Shirayuki counterclockwise in front of her. Tsugi no Mai, the ice user uttered, lightly piercing the ground rapidly 4 times in a semicircle in front of her. From each spot, ice particles flowed upwards and began to surround her sword. Rukia took a battle stance, holding her sword up to her shoulder as though preparing for a powerful forward thrust. Hakuren. The ice swirled violently around Sota no Shirayuki before firing forward in a wave of ice, completely freezing the sand hollow, before it toppled over and shattered. And that, Rukia told Ichigo with a look of superiority, is how you handle enemies that your standard, cut your foe to pieces, strategy can't take care of. Ichigo was highly tempted to scoff at her, but his curiosity won out. But wouldn't a good slash to the hollow's mask take out pretty much any hollow, regardless of composition? Renji looked at Ichigo oddly. You know, that's a good question. That's actually one of the topics for discussion in the Shinigami Academy, meant to inspire critical thinking. There's no particularly solid evidence one way or another, Rukia told Ichigo. I think it would depend on the skill of the Shinigami, and the regenerative ability of the hollow in question. She reached into a pocket somewhere and pulled out her sketchbook. Oh no, I am not going to submit myself to her drawings again. Too late, as Rukia had already quickly drawn a couple of pictures and shoved it into his face. Ichigo's brows furrowed as he struggled to recognize what was in front of him. There seemed to be a bunny in a chibi-sized Shinigami outfit, wielding a sword that looked suspiciously like Zangetsu, facing off against a comical version of the hollow Rukia had just frozen, which was only recognizable by the obvious mask and hollow hole. The next picture showed the hollow sliced in half, and then reforming. Directly underneath that slideshow of pictures was another set. This one had a bunny in a coat with a katana. Okay, now I know that's supposed to be me, but that drawing sucks. The hollow had a lot of scribbles on its mask. Are those supposed to be visual representations of me at high speed? The next picture had the hollow disintegrating. Ichigo frowned. Oh, like if I, in my Bankai, used my high speed and strength to cut that sand hollow's mask into thousands of fragments, it might finish it as its regeneration couldn't keep up with me. Whereas if I slashed it once, the hollow would probably reform as it was only a single slash. Rukia nodded, pleased. I'm glad my drawing helped you out. I would have understood better without the drawings, the orange-haired Shinigami replied deadpan. A second later, he found himself lying face down in the sand, a pain in his back from where Rukia had kicked him. Ow. Whenever you're ready to join us. Ishida called out, an impatient look on his face and a tick above his left eye as he stood on Bawabawa, watching the whole interaction. I hate being ignored like this. Ichigo picked himself up and jumped down to his friends atop Bawabawa, Rukia and Renji following behind. Hey guys. Not that I'm complaining, Kurosaki, but I thought your hollow would be in control, Ishida pointed out. He was, until about an hour ago, the Vizard admitted. When Inoue was kidnapped, I fought him again for control and won. Best not to tell them the stakes. Ichigo. Nell cried out, glomping Ichigo's leg. You did come back. Ichigo let out a very small smile as he patted Nell's helmet. I told you I would, didn't I? Ichigo, you know these hollows? Chad queried. Yeah, long story, but they're technically on our side. They used to work for Aizen, but they were betrayed, and now hate him, Ichigo quickly explained, more for the benefit of Rukia and Renji than anyone else. I'm sure Chad and Ishida have already gotten some information. Pesci and Dondochaka are Nell's former subordinates, from when she was an Espada. Wait, this shrimp was an Espada? Renji asked incredulously, a disbelieving look on his face. Espada trace, Ichigo confirmed with a smirk. Another of the Espada attacked her and damaged her mask, which made her lose most of her power. Before you get any ideas about killing us while she's weaker, we're very, very good at running away, Pesci told them warily. Ishida sighed. We're not going to attack you. Like Kurosaki said, it sounds like you're on our side. Besides, our mission isn't to kill the Espada, it's to save Orihime. Bawabawa, would you please continue towards Las Noches? The large worm-like hollow made noises of agreement as it once more began moving towards the palace. We should be there in about half an hour, Dondochaka announced. Ichigo gripped Zangetsu's hilt, the cloth-covered Zanpakuto silently reassuring him as he scowled. Inoue, hold on. Inoue Orihime sat quietly in her room in Las Noches. She had felt Kurosaki-kun's hollow Reiatsu erupt some time ago, and then it had settled down, more into the Shinigami Reiatsu she was accustomed to. And then he had disappeared off her radar. Kurosaki-kun's probably regained control and returned to the living world. She smiled grimly, which means that he probably knows by now that I've been captured. She waited for a time, meditating as she kept tabs on all the Reiatsu signatures she knew. When she sensed Chad and Ishida without Ichigo, she had grown confused, but Ichigo soon after, catching up with them. Good. Now, let's see if I can join them, Tsubaki, she murmured. Do you think you can cut through the wall, or the bars on the window? The fairy materialized from her hairpin and flew over to the wall, inspecting it. He even punched it a couple of times. It's made from a very strong material, the ninja-like Tsubaki assessed. He quickly flitted outside and back in, judging the thickness of the walls. The wall appears to be about 6 inches thick. I believe if you focused hard enough, I could cut through it. Let me check the bars. A minute later, he descended in front of Inoue. No good, the bars are made out of something stronger than the walls, even if they are thinner. Orihime nodded. All right, thank you, Tsubaki. No, thank you, Orihime. You're finally starting to consider proper applications of my power outside of a last resort, Tsubaki told her with a slightly approving tone, right before he disappeared back into her hairpins. The wielder of rejection powers eyed the wall and tried to consider various scenarios. Well, Tsubaki says we can cut through it. If I do, I can use Santen Kesshun to fly to the others safely. Her face changed to worry. But I had a hard time with the weakest Erincar, and I'm not fast enough to escape. I don't have a high-speed technique like the others. So I'd be easily recaptured if they found out I'd escaped before I could meet up with everyone. She shook her head. I need to stop thinking like that. If I don't want my friends to have risked their lives to save me, I have to risk it. Inoue steadied her resolve and double-checked that no Reiatsu presences were nearby. Sensing none, she brought her hands to her hairpins. Tsubaki, Koden Zanshin, I reject, she whispered, using the full power version. I need to get out of here, to save my friends. Tsubaki manifested himself into the lethally sharp projectile and fired forward. He sliced right through the wall at about head height, widening his cutting edge to approximately a foot wide. Then he repeated the process a few times, making a literal door before returning to Inoue's hairpins. The young woman allowed herself a smile before pushing the door out of place easily, sending it crashing down into the sands below. Santen Kesshun, she murmured, stepping out into the open air, and onto her golden rejection shield. To my friends, she whispered hastily, sensing someone coming. Quickly. She raced off, kneeling on her shield to keep her balance as she flew to rejoin her friends. Ishida frowned. You're not gonna believe this, guys, but I could swear that Orihime is approaching, but she's being pursued. Inoue managed to escape on her own. Ichigo gripped Zangetsu's hilt tightly over his shoulder, ready to draw at a moment's notice. Where? Not too far. Let's go, Ishida ordered, taking charge as he leapt into the air with Harenkyaku, flying quickly. The Shinigami in the party quickly followed, blurring into a Shunpo. Chad activated his arms and followed on land with his Paso del Viento. What about us, don't you know? Dondochaka asked Nell and Pesci. Well, if we follow, there's a chance we'll get caught up in the fight, Pesci pointed out. But Ichigo and everyone else were nice. Nell insisted. We should follow them. Are you sure, Nell-sama? The tall insectoid Erincar questioned. Bawabawa, follow them, Nell ordered as best she could in her childish voice. Orihime glanced over her shoulder. She was being pursued by someone whose Reiatsu felt completely unfamiliar. Whoever it was wasn't as fast as she had seen Ishida go, but he or she was definitely fast enough to be slowly catching up to her. To Orihime's relief, she could feel her friends approaching quickly, and she quickly began her descent to meet up with them. Inoue, she heard Ichigo bellow. This was quickly followed by several shouts from Ichigo's companions. Orihime smiled as she recognized them, everyone descending to the ground. Kurosaki-kun, you, Chad, Rukia, Abarai-san. Orihime, do you know who's following you? Ishida quickly asked, hovering next to her while being inwardly impressed that Orihime had worked out how to fly using her Santen Kesshun. Everyone else mimicked him, surrounding their friend and drawing their weapons. Orihime turned around to face the same way, the direction from which the enemy was approaching. No, it's a different Arrancar than we've met. With a minor booming sound, the Arrancar Sonido ed into view. The Arrancar was incredibly tall, although part of that was almost certainly the sheer size of his head. However, the face was covered by a long, elongated mask, to the point where Ichigo half considered the idea that the Arrancar was actually a wizard. The Arrancar wore the white Espada outfit in such a way that not a shred of his body could be seen. However, everyone was shocked when the Espada seemed taken aback. Rukia, is that you? Rukia could not believe her ears. She hadn't heard that voice in many decades. Kaian Dono. Renji's jaw dropped. Kaian, as in, Shiba Kaian, the Shinigami who died when he was possessed by a hollow. As in, Rukia's old Fukutecho. Everyone else leaned back in shock at this information. That's me, the Espada said behind the mask before reaching up and taking it off, revealing a very familiar face, one that made Rukia's knees quiver. Kaian Dono, Rukia breathed. This is impossible. Ichigo picked up where she left off. Wait, how is this possible? If you're this Shiba Kaian person, how did you become a hollow? And why are you working for Aizen? Kaian nodded seriously, acknowledging the need for an explanation. As Abarai-san already said, when I was a Shinigami, I was Rukia's Fukutecho. He smiled warmly. Rukia and I were very good friends. Very good friends. Rukia half laughed, half sobbed in relief. He's here. He's alive. You were the only one who treated me as my own person after the Kuchiki family adopted me. Renji had the decency to flinch at that. You taught me how to use my sword, you encouraged me, you were the first person I ever showed my Shikai to. Kaian smiled more at Rukia. Yeah, anyways, I was married to the love of my life, Shiba Miyako. But one day, a hollow appeared, and Miyako-chan was assigned to track it down. He clenched his fist. The hollow killed her, and I swore revenge. Kaian Dono pursued, accompanied by myself and Yukatake Taicho, Rukia continued. We found it in its lair, and Kaian Dono requested to fight it by himself. I was granted permission, Kaian followed up, so I jumped down and fought. But as soon as my Zanpakuto touched the hollow, it broke. Apparently the hollow's power was to, once a day, be able to break any Zanpakuto it touches. My poor Nejibana, I fought back using Kido, and was doing well. I begged Yukatake Taicho to let me help him, the short black-haired Shinigami added. But I was denied, with an explanation. She took a deep breath. Rukia, remember this, there are two types of fights. Whenever we are in battle, we must be one of the two. The fight for life or, the fight for pride. She quoted, glaring lightly at Kaian out of the corner of her eye. If it were a fight to protect life, then he would have accepted the help. But otherwise, his pride would have been broken, maybe for good. Men and their stupid pride. Kaian chuckled, rubbing the back of his head in embarrassment before turning serious again. The hollow managed to get behind me, and then it showed its real power. Rukia lowered her head in sorrow. It merged with him. Yukatake Taicho told me to run, that he would fight it off, but I came back because I realized I could not face myself in the mirror every day if I did that. Yukatake Taicho fell to his illness then, and the hollow attacked me. She flinched, unable to go on. Rukia-chan killed me, Kaian said simply. But apparently the hollow had been one of Aizen's experiments, and was designed to reconstitute itself in Hueco Mundo every time it was destroyed. As it had merged with me, my body was restored, and I managed to establish dominance. I became an Espada in order to gain more strength, to take my revenge on the person ultimately responsible for Miyako-chan's death, Aizen Sosuke. I managed to convince everyone that the hollow was in charge. It wasn't hard, the hollow's personality is still buried in here somewhere. I keep the mask on, so people can't see my distaste for what's happening, and to keep Aizen from seeing my true face. When it was clear that Kaian was finished, Ichigo glanced at his friends. Ishida still looked slightly suspicious, but his stance suggested that he was willing to accept the story. Ichigo, however, was unconvinced. His own forays in that line between Shinigami and Hollow refused to let him accept the story so easily. Cazador said that a being is only truly a Hollow once the mask takes over. If he truly is the Shinigami, why is his Reiatsu so very much a hollows? He paused to reconsider. Then again, I don't see his hollow hole, maybe he's a special case. Oi, Kyan, if you're truly Kyan, a Shinigami with a hollow body, why don't you bring out your Shikai? I'm sure Rukia will recognize it, and I know for a fact that Arankar don't have them. Kyan smiled as he drew his sword, slowly spinning it. Rankle the seas and the skies, Nejibana. The sword transformed into what looked like a trident, with a blue tassel on the end. Ichigo watched closely, but Kyan's body didn't seem to change any, as was the usual case for a resurrection. Rukia's form trembled. It's you. Oh Kami, it's really you. She rushed forward and hugged the long-thought dead Shinigami, tears of relief flowing freely down her face. Kyan held her close as well with his free hand. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. Ichigo was convinced, and a quick glance at his friends showed that they seemed to be as well. Everyone had lowered their weapons, and both Chad and Renji were smiling softly at the pair. What can you tell us about Las Noches? The lost member of the Shiba clan nodded to him. Aizen arranged to have artificial sunlight shining everywhere above it. I think this was meant to be an obstacle for me, as one of the downsides of the hollow that absorbed me is a weakness to sunlight. It burns me, which is another reason for why I wear the mask. Rukia looked up at her dear friend's face in surprise. That's horrible. Kyan shrugged. It could be worse. Ishida stepped forward. Listen, we came here to rescue Orihime. He gestured towards the girl. Quite frankly, we're at a disadvantage, coming here onto Aizen's territory. We don't know the terrain, the forces there, and I rather doubt that we're enough to combat Aizen's army. The Shinigami turned hollow nodded grimly as Rukia broke away, embarrassed at her own display earlier. I am only the Novano Espada. From what I've heard of you guys from Grimmjow and Yami, I wouldn't be much help to you. Information is the most valuable asset anyone can have, Ishida pointed out. What can you tell us? Kyan scratched his head in thought. Aizen is planning to invade the living world and create the King's Key. We heard about that already, Renji told him impatiently. Renji, Chad rumbled, putting a hand on his arm, let him speak. Aizen originally wanted us to just stay in our rooms and wait for you to come invade, Kyan informed them. I suppose that was so we could take you on in our own territory. When the lovely lady here escaped on her own unexpectedly, I was closest, and took pursuit. We were on standing orders not to let her escape, and I figured that I could stage her escape with whoever was coming to rescue her later. Anything else? Rukia asked. Nothing. He doesn't really share his plans with us, Kyan told her with a self-depreciative chuckle. Sorry I can't be much help. We should remember that Soul Society is planning to send a few Taicho in here to start taking out the Espada, Chad told everyone. Renji nodded. It would be bad if Aizen became aware of it and didn't leave any Espada here while going to the living world to create the King's Key. Imagine having some of our strongest Taicho here, heavily delayed as they make their way back to a Garganta back to the living world. Yeah, that'd be bad, Ichigo agreed. So, what all do you guys think? Start taking out some of the Espada now while we've got a chance. Or head back to the living world since we've rescued Inoue. I don't think we're gonna get a much better chance, Renji stated. We've got insider information from Kyan here, all of us are here and at full strength, and according to Kyan they are separated and waiting for us. I think we should go back to the living world and wait, Rukia suggested. We already know that the Espada's Hierro is weaker outside of Hueco Mundo, which gives us a home team advantage. Plus, Urahara's worked out a way to protect all of Karakura's residents, which allows us to fight at full strength, and the Shinigami can come to the living world to aid us far faster than they can get to Hueco Mundo. That may be so, but it's usually not a wise tactical decision to wait to be attacked, Ishida pointed out. We could easily be caught unawares, and then any advantage we have in the living world could be countered. I vote we continue on. I'm sorry you, Abarai-san, but I think we should go back to the living world as well, Inoue told them. There's too much chance that one of us would be captured again, maybe by a high-level Espada or maybe by Aizen himself. I agree with Rukia, we should retreat so we can have backup if we need it. I could go either way, Chad admitted. All of you have good points. We have 2 healers here, which means that we could probably hold our own for a long while. But at the same time, Ichigo only managed a draw against the Sexta Espada, Grimmjow. I'm pretty sure I speak for all of us when I say that Ichigo is the fastest one here, and he's not exactly weak in strength either. If we assume that almost every Espada above 6 is faster or stronger than Grimmjow, then we'd have one hell of a time taking them down, especially on their own turf. He shook his head. I'll go with whatever Ichigo decides. I'll abstain from voting, Kyan said seriously. I'm still going to be working towards my vengeance against Aizen, regardless of your decision. The wizard saw everyone staring at him, waiting for his vote to be cast. It would be his decision whether or not to go on. Ichigo swallowed. Personally, I want to go test myself against the Espada, to see how much I've grown. I'm sure I could take on Grimmjow and Neutra. He frowned more deeply, but I definitely see everyone's points. He paused for a moment and made his decision. Chapter 14. Betrayal. Let's go home, Ichigo finally said. We don't really have any business being here, now that we've got Inoue. Let Soul Society take care of things here, we have a home to protect, and I'll be damned if I'm not there to defend it. He turned to Ishida and Renji. We'll have plenty of chances to fight the Espada when Aizen tries to create the King's Key in Karakura, and let's not forget that the Espada can create their Garganta to get there while we're chasing them out here in Hueco Mundo. He shook his head. We must stay vigilant and protect Karakura. Ishida and Renji nodded at him, accepting the logic. HMPH, the Quincy scoffed lightly, dunno when you grew a brain, but you made a couple of good points. Alright, Kurosaki, let's head back. What about Kyan Dono though? Rukia asked, sending him a worried glance. Kyan waved them off. Go on, head back. I'll keep trying to subvert him from here. Just be sure to tell everyone I'm still around, K. Don't want to get killed just yet. How are we going to get back? Chad queried. I don't think Urahara's Garganta is still accessible, is it? Even if it was, this place is hardly full of landmarks, Rukia pointed out. I didn't bother to remember where it was. What about you guys? Ichigo and Renji shook their heads no. I don't think Urahara kept it open, Renji added bitterly. Kyan laughed. Is that all you need? Not a problem for everyone's favorite former Fukutecho. He began charging his Reiatsu, raising an arm. The higher level Espada can do it just by gesturing, but I'm not up to that level yet. Without warning, he whipped around, spinning Nejibana and creating a multitude of water, stabbing at Rukia. Caught entirely by surprise, Rukia was unprepared for the assault. While she did manage to dodge the stab instinctively, one of the trident's prongs managed to graze her side right before a wave of crushing water slammed into her and forced her to her knees several feet away. Ichigo drew Zangetsu immediately and Shunpo-ed in front of Kyan, his suspicions returning in full force. You are not Shiba Kyan, are you? He accused. The others had all drawn their weapons as well. In Inoue's case, her hands were at her hairpins, ready to create a defense or offense at a moment's notice, and had surrounded Kyan. Of course I'm Kyan, the Espada said with a cocky grin. It was just a test. Like Rukia told Ya, I was the one who taught her how to use her sword. I just wanted to see how much she'd grown. He sent an honest smile her way. You've gotten a lot better, Rukia. It used to be that you'd have been impaled by such a surprise attack. Why? Rukia demanded, getting to her feet. Why would you attack me like that, knowing that the old me would have died in an instant? Is it really so surprising? Kyan asked. After you killed me with your own 2 hands, and condemned me to this living hell in Hueco Mundo, is it so surprising that I would want to strike back, to kill the one who killed me? You're really pissing me off. Ichigo growled, his grip around Zangetsu's hand clenching. Ichigo, Rukia barked. Everyone, please, stay back, let me handle this. Ichigo turned to see Rukia slowly draw her own blade. Making a decision, he took several steps to the side. The others followed suit, allowing Rukia unblocked view and access to the Espada. Kyan Dono, when I stabbed him, when he was merged with that hollow, he temporarily regained control of himself and spoke to me, hanging on through the pain of having his lungs filled with blood. Her eyes flashed dangerously. He thanked me for killing him before he could kill anyone, so he could die with a clear conscience. You may have Nejibana, you may have Kyan Dono's face, his memories, but Kyan Dono would never use a potentially lethal strike against someone he thought might not be able to handle it. You are not Kyan Dono. What are you talking about? Kyan asked with a grin, holding up his free hand. I really am Kai. Don't say his name again. Rukia screamed, letting her Reiatsu flare in patterns around her. Dance, Sota no Shirayuki. Some no Mai. She Shunpo ed out of Kyan's vision. Kyan gasped, remembering what happened next. Sparing only a glance behind him to verify his findings, he saw that Rukia was indeed behind him, slashing the air with Sota no Shirayuki. He jumped away just as she cried out, Tsukashiro. He was just in time to avoid the pillar of ice that erupted from a white circle under his feet. Rukia whipped around, and seeing Kyan in the air, quickly stabbed 4 spots in front of her in the desert sand. Tsugi no Mai, Hakuren, she sent a wave of ice at her former mentor. Kyan countered by slashing Nejibana down into the blast, unleashing a torrent of water that delayed the Hakuren just long enough for Kyan to escape. Have you forgotten who taught you to fight, Rukia? Some no Mai, Tsukashiro. Tsugi no Mai, Hakuren. I was there when you devised those attacks. Kyan taunted. You can't possibly think you'll catch me in them. Stop acting like you're Kyan Dono when we both know you're not. Rukai demanded, rushing him and raising her sword to slice him apart physically. Kyan blocked easily. You've got guts to try to kill the same man twice, Rukia. Shut up, Rukia screeched, slashing Sota no Shirayuki against Nejibana with all her strength with one hand. Her other one whipped up, palm towards Kyan. Hado 33, Sukatsui. It struck Kyan directly in the face, making him reel back in pain, clutching at his face. When he moved his hand away from his face, Rukia could see that Kyan was mildly burned, and he looked rather pissed off. That was a mistake. He snarled. Zamari, get the girl. Hearing the mild sonic boom of a sonito, everyone whipped around to Inoue, where Zamari had appeared directly behind her and grabbed onto her arms firmly. Aizen-sama requests you stay in your quarters, he said clearly to Inoue. I am here to escort you. Soten Kishun, Inoue cried, her fairies forming an oval barrier around Zamari. As it happened, Zamari's hands were outside the barrier, and the barrier simply continued around his wrists. When Zamari attempted to sonito a second later, nothing happened. What did you do, woman? He demanded. Welcome to my Soten Kishun, Inoue whispered. This is my prison technique. This cannot stop me, Zamari stated calmly. All I need do is knock you unconscious, and your power will disappear. At that moment, Ichigo Shunpo ed next to them and sliced Zangetsu straight down, attempting to cleave Zamari's hands off. Sensing the danger, Zamari quickly brought his hands back into the barrier, which closed up the moment he had. Now the Espada was completely trapped. I apologize, Araniero, the captured Arankar stated slowly. It seems I underestimated them. Then allow me to finish them, Kyan answered with a sigh, deflecting Rukia's next physical strike with ease. Ichigo gripped Zangetsu more firmly. I won't let you. No, Ichigo, Rukia barked. He's mine. Tsugi no Mai, Hakuren. Kyan leapt up into the side, dodging the wave of ice. He's taken Kyan Dono's form, and pretended to be him. I need to do this. I need to be the one to finish him, to finish what I started so long ago. How touching, Kyan commented with a grin. Instead of accepting your friend's help, you want to kill me, your precious Kyan Dono. You are not Kyan Dono, Rukia responded, her voice as cold as her Zanpakuto's ice. Araniero, was it? Tell the truth, she bellowed. A very deep voice answered her from within Kyan's head. Very well. With a disgusting noise, Kyan's face began to distort and melt away, until it was clear that there was a long cylinder for a head, a tank filled with some sort of red liquid, lighter than and not as thick as blood. Inside the tank were 2 heads, each tattooed with the number 9. Allow us to introduce ourselves, a higher-pitched voice came from the lower head. We are Araniero Arurueri. They finished together. Novano Espada. Flesh began to appear on the cylinder, swiftly forming Kyan's face once more. When Araniero spoke, Kyan's voice came out. You asked for the truth, Rukia. He grinned maniacally. My power is to completely take all the powers of the hollows I eat. Unlike any other Espada, I have unlimited potential to evolve. Ichigo had sickening feeling he knew what was next. But he was beat to the punch by Ishida's intellect. You were telling the truth about how Shiba Kaien, or at least the hollow that merged with him, reformed in Hueco Mundo using Shiba-san's spirit body, Ishida stated more than guessed, pushing his glasses up to the bridge of his nose. But you found and ate him, didn't you? Which gave you the abilities of Shiba Kaien, and the hollow that absorbed him. That's how you can use Shiba-san's body, his memory, and his Zanpakuto. Correct, Quincy. Rukia shook her head, her hands trembling at the revelation. I thought I saved you, Kaien Dono, instead I only prolonged your agony. Oi, Rukia, you okay? Renji called out, concerned. She's not okay, and she won't be, Araniero revealed with a smirk. That's right, Kaien is in here, screaming. He desperately wants to take over, but that won't happen. I'm far too strong for that. Rukia fell to her knees. Kaien Dono is alive. Within the Espada, she looked at her Zanpakuto, feeling weak. She no longer had the strength of will or of body to kill the Espada, not while Kaien was still fighting. Rukia, Ichigo yelled. Don't listen to him. Don't you remember what you told me? If Kaien was really eaten by this asshole, then killing him will free Kaien's spirit through the purification of our Zanpakuto. Rukia's head jerked up at that. Yes, that's right. Slaying a hollow with a Zanpakuto purifies it of all the deeds done as a hollow, and sends the spirit to soul society. Any soul that has been eaten undergoes the same process. Hope began to fill her, and her hands steadied as she rose to her feet. If I slay you, Araniero, then I will free Kaien Dono. Araniero frowned using Kaien's face. Damn you, you orange-haired bastard. I had her right where I wanted her. Now she's more determined than ever. He began to understand just how Kurosaki Ichigo frustrated his superiors so, and how he intrigued Aizen-sama. I see you've found your resolve. But you will never manage to kill me. He reached over with his right hand, the crook of his elbow holding Nejibana up, and took off his left glove, revealing a truly disgusting, writhing form of flesh that resembled a tentacle whose end had been cut off. Several smaller tentacles grew from approximately where the wrist should be. Say hello to my own Zanpakuto. Devour. Glotoneria. Araniero's lower half dissolved, reforming into a rapidly expanding purplish blob that had several tentacles waving around. It looked like a blob-style octopus, with several mouths forming on the middle of some of the appendages. Ichigo couldn't help it, he laughed aloud. Just how are you supposed to move quickly like that? He taunted. Now all of Rukia's attacks are gonna hit you, and you'll shatter just like that. Even my old, slower self could hit you now, Chad added with a smirk. Ishida actually turned away. This is embarrassing. Why would any Espada actually make himself slower and less able to dodge his enemy's attacks when that was all that saved him earlier? Rukia, if you would do the honors. Renji asked with a mocking smile at Araniero. Gladly. Rukia quickly pierced the ground 4 times in front of her in a semicircle. Tsugi no Mai, Hakuren. A wave of ice rushed over, only to be stopped by a tidal wave of water flowing from Nejibana. Nice try, Rukia, Araniero mocked. My turn. In this form, I can use all the powers of all the hollows I have ever eaten. He grinned. And I've eaten over 33,000. So try this one on for size. 2 of his many appendages shaped themselves into an enormous scorpion-like tail which began to launch balls of an unsavory-looking substance at Rukia, who had to repeatedly shunpo out of the way. It was a good thing she did. The yellow-green balls exploded on impact. If I can just strike the head, he'll be finished. Rukia thought coldly, now shunpoing next to Araniero's torso and swinging Soda no Shirayuki. But to her enormous surprise, her Zanpakuto shattered on impact. Did you forget, Rukia? Araniero asked, almost kindly even as he backhanded her back to the ground. When I swung Nejibana into that hollow, Metastasia, my sword shattered. You are not Kaien Dono. Rukia screamed angrily, picking herself back up just in time to dodge another shot from the scorpion tail. Even so, your Zanpakuto is gone, Araniero told her with an evil smile. And you're the one who made this a fight for pride, no one else will interfere. How do you plan to purify me without it? You only shattered the blade, the short Shinigami informed him, holding the hilt of Soda no Shirayuki firmly. San no Mai. What? Araniero gasped. You have a third dance. Shirafune. Rukia called out, holding the hilt in front of her. Before the Arrancar's very eyes, Rukia's Zanpakuto reformed from ice particles that quickly flowed from the remnants of the Shinigami's other attacks. She glared at Araniero. "Kyan Dono, allow me to free you." She lunged forward and, instead of aiming at the body of Kyan, she plunged her sword into the blob that had formed Araniero's resurrection. "Ha! What a weak attack," Araniero taunted, before realizing he was losing feeling. He looked down and extended a few of his tentacles. Before his very eyes, they were slowing and being encased in ice. "What is this?" "My third dance, Shirafune," Rukia informed him frigidly. "You think one of my dances would only reform my Zanpakuto if it breaks? Of course not. My pride, Sota no Shirayuki's pride, would never accept that. Shirafune reforges my Zanpakuto with the coldest of ice. So cold, that anything that touches my sword will freeze solid. Feel it, Araniero Ararueri, as your blood slows in your veins, as you find yourself weak. Die, Novano Espada, knowing that I, Kuchiki Rukia of the 13th Division, have avenged Shiba Kyan." Through Rukia's speech, Araniero's eyes widened as he struggled mightily. His tentacles would respond extremely sluggishly as they were encased by the ice. He could feel the ice almost reach the body he had taken from Kyan. "If I die, then you all will die with me." Using all of his Reiatsu and strength, he ripped the scorpion tail from its icy prison and launched an enormous ball of combustive death Inoue Orihime. Inoue's eyes widened, but she knew better than to freeze up. "Santen Keshun," she cried out, forming a large triangular shield that she prayed was strong enough to withstand the blast. "Getsuga Tenshou," Ichigo roared. At the same time, Ishida pulled back a very large arrow and shot it. Both attacks collided with Araniero's last attack and caused it to explode early. Inoue held strong, focusing her Reiatsu into the shield, holding off the shock of the explosion. Her Santen Keshun first cracked, and then shattered as the last of the attack faded away. She bent to her knees, heavily winded from expending so much at once. Araniero grinned as he saw the result, even as the ice crept up his neck. As the ice encased his head, he screamed, "Zamari, kill them all," and then the ice covered his face. Rukia wasted no time withdrawing her sword from the new statue of ice, leaping up and beheading the monstrous Novano Espada, trusting that her friends could hold off Zamari for a few moments. Inoue, hearing Araniero's scream, felt horror take root in her heart even as she turned and saw the Septima Espada released from Inoue's Soten Keshun prison. And then her world went black. Zamari brought his hand back up from the expert chop to the back of her neck, putting in just enough effort to knock her out. "I am sorry, Araniero. But Aizen-sama left very strict orders." A moment later, both he and Inoue were gone, just in time to avoid being beheaded from Renji and Ichigo, having come to him from either side. "Kurosaki," Ishida barked, leaping up and following Zamari's trail with his Harenkyaku. "Already on it," Ichigo replied, flickering into a shunpo. To his mild surprise, Ishida was noticeably faster than he was before Ichigo had left. "You've gotten faster," he complimented. "Of course. What do you think I've been doing while you were gone, Kurosaki?" "Having tea and lying about." Ichigo frowned, ignoring his friend in favor of sensing outwards. Zamari was slowly but surely pulling away, and they were almost at Las Noches. "Fuck it, Bankai." Ishida didn't bat an eye as Ichigo suddenly vanished from sight. Instead, he merely picked up the pace as well, and felt enormous satisfaction at the shocked look in Ichigo's eyes. "Yes, Kurosaki, I am now as fast as your Bankai." The Quincy gloated, readying his bow. Now that Ichigo was closer, and not completely preoccupied with an opponent, he noticed that Ishida's bow had changed. It now resembled a curved spider web more than anything else. "Nice bow. Any new abilities?" Recognizing that Ichigo was trying to exchange possibly vital combat capabilities right before battle, Ishida refrained from mocking him. "I can fire up to 1,200 shots consecutively, though they are naturally weaker than my normal shots. I can also change the direction of my shot somewhat after firing it. Anything I should know?" "Mask got an upgrade, and I've learned a couple supplementary moves with Zangetsu, but they have a charge time. Should be able to use Sero, but haven't tried yet," Ichigo summarized. "Be ready, we're almost upon him." "You don't have to tell me, Kurosaki." Meanwhile, Rukia, Renji and Chad looked at each other. Why do you think they left us behind? Renji asked his friends. I just fought and killed an Espada, Rukia pointed out. I suppose I should take a few moments to rest and recover my Reiatsu. Chad nodded. They left us to guard you during your recovery while they recover Inoue. Are you okay, Rukia? Renji asked carefully. He didn't want to offend her, but her emotions had obviously been on a roller coaster in the last half hour. Rukia sighed, sitting down in the sands of Hueco Mundo. I'm as well as can be expected. I merely hope that Kyan Dono return to Soul Society upon my slaying Araniero. Failing that, I can take comfort that he will be reincarnated eventually. She shook her head with a self-deprecating chuckle. I really thought Ichigo might be his reincarnation, you know. My second chance to save his soul. They are a lot alike, Renji admitted, sitting next to her as he gathered his courage. Is that why you like Ichigo so much? He held his breath. He was taking a chance being upfront about Rukia's obvious attraction to the orange-haired idiot. Rukia glared mildly at Renji. Just what are you saying, Renji? Her pineapple-haired friend swallowed the lump that had formed in his throat. I'm saying that no matter how I look at it, you seem to be attracted to Kurosaki Ichigo. I'm just wondering why. What makes you say that? Rukia asked emotionlessly. Renji flinched at her tone nonetheless, but was determined to make his point. You're comfortable enough to banter with him and beat on him when you keep yourself distant from almost everyone else. If I'm not mistaken, you are highly sensitive to his Reiatsu, and he was the first thing you thought of when I asked you to come along on our mission to protect Karakura. You sleep in his closet for crying out loud. I don't know what all happened during that time when Ichigo had all your powers, but obviously something must have. You're closer to him than you are to any of your old friends. The ice-using Shinigami gaped for a moment and then schooled her face into a stern look. I suppose I can see how you reached that conclusion, Renji. She sighed. Ichigo is nothing but a very good friend. Yes, Karakura is associated with Ichigo for me, because I met him there and that encounter changed both our lives permanently. Yes, I am sensitive to his Reiatsu, because I was there, living with him constantly putting out such Reiatsu all the time. I am sensitive to your Reiatsu as well, I hope you know. Renji did not know that, as a matter of fact, but he waved her on anyway. Rukia nodded in acknowledgement. I sleep in his closet for a simple reason, because that is what we are accustomed to, and it's easier for me to be there to explain the odd thing to Ichigo when he needs it. So you wouldn't be interested in dating Ichigo? Renji asked to clarify. He understood everything she said, but he wanted to hear a blunt rejection. Rukia suddenly had a sneaking suspicion she knew what her friend was doing. She pointed a finger at him with wide eyes. You're trying to hook me up with Ichigo. What? No. Renji denied. You are. Rukia looked at him angrily. I don't need you to find me a suitor. Did Ni-sama put you up to this? Huh. Renji blinked. Why would Kuchiki Taicho send me of all people to find you a suitor? Because you work for him, and you know me well enough to find people I could stand to marry for politics. I assure you, Rukia, that was never my intention. I was asking as your friend, Renji said softly. I haven't been a part of your life in a long while, and then that whole mess with your execution, and now the Arrancar, and saving Inoue. Rukia softened and settled down. Sorry, she offered. It's okay. Chad cleared his throat, making both his companions jump. They'd completely forgotten that the gentle giant was there. Rukia, if you're finished recovering, we should attempt to rejoin Ichigo and Ishida. Agreed. She got up and dusted the sands of Hueco Mundo off her clothes. All right, let's go. Renji followed suit as they began to run. He felt somewhat better, now that he'd finally asked his childhood friend her feelings for Ichigo. While he recognized he'd never gotten an answer for Rukia's possible interest in the substitute Shinigami, Renji was put at ease. He was even able to convince himself that there was still a chance for him. Cool it, he told himself sternly, if a touch sadly. Wait until after the war's over. And don't get your hopes up. Renji felt a stirring in his mind, one which he had come to recognize as his Zanpakuto wishing to converse. Why wait? Zabumaru asked simply. Why not let yourself hope? Rukia is a Kuchiki, Renji confessed. A noble, her brother is my Taicho, and I don't feel I have a chance. I've seen what happens to noble families. They get married off for political gains, and I have very little political power. He would never approve. Zabumaru shifted somewhat. The wielder of Senbon Sakura, Kuchiki Byakuya. He is your foe. Renji felt like laughing bitterly, and he could feel Zabumaru get the impression. He is a potential foe. Before I can know, I need to know how Rukia feels. Why? That was actually a good question. Renji's ambition was to become stronger than Kuchiki Byakuya. That was his whole reason for going to Kuchiki Taicho's squad, becoming his Fukuteicho. It was a major reason for his efforts into learning Bankai. One way or another, Zabumaru and Senbon Sakura would clash. Okay, now that I think about it, yes, Kuchiki Byakuya is my foe. If we can defeat him, then I would feel much better about asking to court Rukia. Then we shall defeat him and prove our strength. You grow stronger every day, and become more adept at our Bankai. Remember, Renji, that when our Bankai was not even a day old, we forced Kuchiki Byakuya into Bankai and nearly defeated him. Renji nodded to himself, taking heart at the encouragement. Do you have any suggestions on how we can get stronger? Your foe favors Kido. Recall how he locked us in place with that Bakudo and then brought us to defeat with his Bankai. Learn how to counter it, and you take away one of his greatest strengths. As always, Zabumaru made the solution sound so simple, and it made sense. Thank you, Zabumaru. You are welcome, Renji. Zabumaru's presence retreated into his inner world, and Renji nodded once more to himself, feeling his resolve strengthen now that he had a plan. Dash 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 dash. Ichigo and Ishida had caught up with Zamari, who had realized the inevitability of their arrival and set Inoue against the wall of Las Noches. You have arrived, Zamari noticed. Your powers of observation are astounding, Ichigo taunted. Zamari laughed quietly, as though at a private joke. You two are very fast, I will concede. I have the fastest Sonido amongst the Espada. Shall we have a contest of speed? Allow me to reintroduce myself. I am Zamari Leroux, Septima Espada. Septima, only one step below Grimjow, careful, Ishida, Ichigo warned. He's not boasting about that speed of his, he's so fast he leaves tangible afterimages. Zamari turned calm eyes on the Shinigami. I wonder how you know about that. Unless you are that Arankar I talked to earlier today. Let's just say he and I are rather close, Ichigo said mysteriously, gripping Tensa Zangetsu tightly. Give us back Inoue, and we won't kill you. Or at least I won't, he corrected himself, glancing at his Quincy partner. Not so sure about Ishida here. Instinct flared and both Ichigo and Ishida leapt out of the way in opposite directions as two clones of Zamari appeared behind them and attempted to stab them with his sword. You have excellent reflexes, the Arankar that they'd been addressing complimented. But it is arrogance to think that you can defeat me. And your arrogance shows simply by that very statement, Ishida commented, firing 3 arrows at once, each of them rocketing towards Zamari. One of them was struck and vanished, while the other 2 Sonido-ed out of the way, reappearing several feet to Ishida's side. It doesn't matter if there's 1 or 3 of you, I have no need to guess which one is the original. Kurosaki, protect Orihime, make sure no more Arankar come to take her away while I finish this weakling. Ishida's sure giving a lot of orders lately, Ichigo thought to himself as he Shunpo-ed next to Orihime and gently picked her up. Think you can take him alone? Ishida glared at him before vanishing with his Harenkyaku, neatly avoiding another strike from his opponent. He reappeared several meters away, firing several more arrows at Zamari, who dodged and cloned himself to replace the copies who had been struck. Kurosaki, stop wasting time and just go. With a single nod of acknowledgement, Ichigo vanished with all the speed of his Bankai-enhanced Shunpo, taking the unconscious Inoue with him. A shame you sent them away, Zamari said calmly, I would have greatly enjoyed what is about to happen next then. As it is, you have proven that I will not catch you with my own sword under normal circumstances. Ishida raised an eyebrow as the clones vanished, leaving only the single Zamari. You are about to use your Resurrection. Indeed, Ishida scoffed, whatever it is, you will not defeat me. And there is your arrogance, human. It is foolish to think that a human, no matter how gifted, can defeat an Espada. Then allow me to prove you wrong. Release your Resurrection, Espada, and this Quincy will destroy you, Ishida challenged, using his free hand to push his glasses up his nose a little, making them flash. Zamari shook his head ruefully, as though disappointed. Very well then. He brought his Zanpakuto up horizontally in front of him, then let go. His sword stayed there, levitating in front of him as the Espada took a bracing stance, as though preparing to catch something heavy, but then moved his hands to either side of him. He looked as though he were meditating, almost. Then his head slowly tilted further and further, his neck twisting, until it was perpendicular to the rest of his body. Suppress, Brujeria. His Zanpakuto abruptly bent, again and again until it was in an edged spiral shape. Mist exuded from it and Ishida could feel the mist melding with Zamari's Reiatsu. When the transformation was over a few moments later, Zamari's new form was revealed. His upper body was still that of a human, though now covered in a white skin-tight outfit that revealed only his face and hands. However, similarly to Aranierro's Resurrección, Zamari had completely lost his legs, which had reformed into a large pumpkin-like shape. However, the most notable thing about him was that all over his body, eyes had appeared. Ishida frowned. Those eyes must have a purpose. His power, whatever it is, must be strong and difficult to elude in order to make up for his apparent inability to move. His eyes widened as Zamari raised a hand towards him. His palm contained an eye, and it suddenly pulsed with Reiatsu. In that instant, he vanished with a burst of Harenkyaku. A moment later, he reappeared several meters away, and glanced in the direction of where he had been. What? Nothing seems to have happened. You were wondering what happened, Zamari stated more than guessed. Your intuition told you to move, that I was about to attack, and yet nothing happened. He smiled triumphantly. And yet something has happened. Look at your left hand. Ishida did and gasped. A sun symbol had appeared on the back of his hand. A glower settled on his face as he quickly ran through one of his Quincy exercises to limber up his fingers. I see the symbol, Arankar, but what does it do? To understand, you must realize that everything has a sovereignty to it. Everything is ruled by something else. A peasant is ruled by his local lord, who is then ruled by the king. But the peasant rules his house and possessions. Zamari smiled. What my Resurrección does, is allow me to usurp that rule. Each of my eyes has the ability to steal sovereignty over whatever it sees, and allows me to use it as though it were a part of me. Now, intruder, I have taken your left hand. To demonstrate, extend towards me, left hand. To Ishida's horror, his left hand darted out, reaching for its new master, pulling his arm along with it. Nevertheless, he stood his ground. This is bad. He's already drastically reduced my effectiveness. What can I do? That's it. As you can see, my power allows me to use your own body against you. Your brain no longer commands your left hand. If I hit you in the head, then I can control your whole body. This ability, I call it Amor, the Espada finished. Now then, little archer, left hand, choke him. The hand made no movement. I said choke him. It won't work, the Quincy told him with a smirk, using his left hand to raise his glasses up a little, making them flash. But how? Zamari demanded, infuriated. Your sun symbol is a marker of your Reiatsu, Ishida analyzed. It does indeed allow you to manipulate whatever has that symbol to do what you wish. However, I am a Quincy, bound by mortal limits, and our bodies succumb to the susceptibilities of age. To counter that, we created a technique that allows our old to use their bodies with all the dexterity and speed of their youth, through use of spirit threads controlled directly by my brain to use our body like we would a puppet. We call it, Ransotengai. He glared at his opponent. You may have imprinted your own control over my hand, but I can counter with my Ransotengai. And as your Amor and my Ransotengai counter each other, my brain is able to use its normal currents to direct my body. All I have to do is use my Ransotengai to move in direct opposite whatever you command. Having regained control of himself, Zamari smiled. I must admit, I am impressed that a lowly human could come so far. But I must wonder, I have many eyes. It must take quite some concentration and constant attention to counter my ability from one eye. Can you counter them all and still fight? Ishida gripped his bow firmly and formed an arrow. We'll see. He vanished into Harenkyaku, going around the Espada, quietly counting the number of eyes he had as he dodged the blasts of Amor and fired back some arrows at the Arrancar's torso, which Zamari blocked with spots on his body that were not covered in eyes. 50 eyes, he smiled. I'm quite possibly the worst opponent you could have ever faced, Zamari. Oh, why is that? Because I'm an archer, and you're nothing but weak points. Ishida let loose a flurry of arrows, managing to hit 5 out of 12 eyes on Zamari's lower body. The other 7 had suddenly closed, covered by the same pink flesh-like material that made up Zamari's lower half. The open eyes, upon being hit, imploded. Zamari screamed in pain. You arrogant wretch, he bellowed. You cannot protect all your eyes without sacrificing your ability, Ishida taunted. I will pick them off one at a time, and then I will take your head. Fine, Zamari growled. Let's see how you dodge all of my eyes at once. I must protect my head at all costs. Ishida used Harenkyaku to once more get behind Zamari, where he'd eliminated the 5 eyes, and crouched down, using his spider web bow as a shield. He winced as several of the eyes pulsed in unison and hit his bow at once, making it buckle. But Ishida wasn't being idle. A silver rod strikes the 5-fingered stone bed. Ishida used his free hand to grip one of his silver tubes from his utility belt, wincing as his bow shattered under the onslaught and he could feel his legs being taken over. Quintuple restraining frames. He flung the silver tube at the Espada. What? The Espada suddenly found himself in complete darkness. What did you do? He demanded. The Quincy smiled as he saw that Zamari was surrounded on all sides by his stone prison, emblazoned with a 5-pointed Quincy cross. Ishida stood up and brushed himself off, realizing that by cutting off his opponent's sight, the sun symbols were no longer on him. He was free from Amor. That was another Quincy technique, grits. It allows me to completely envelop a target in a stone casing, covered by our Quincy cross. It can be broken out of with enough strength, but as you seem to have no legs, I purposely made it so the stone is more than your arm's length away. You cannot use your eyes, you cannot hit me. Know in your final moments that it was I, Ishida or you, Quincy, that killed you. No, curse you, Zamari screamed, unleashing his eyes again and again on his imprisonment, but finding himself unable to escape. He would have to use Sero, or Gran Rey Sero, but the truth of the matter was that he had not done so in quite some time, in favor of using his eyes, which were faster than either of those. He had always derived amusement by watching his enemies tear themselves apart under his spell. As a result, he needed several seconds to charge, which he wasted no time beginning. Even so, he knew his end was near. Hail Aizen Sama. Ishida needed no such charge time. Drawing a seal Schneider from his belt, he pulled it back on his newly recreated bow, and fired directly for Zamari's head. It easily pierced the rock, and went straight through the Espada's skull. The Quincy technique grits fell apart under the Reiatsu absorbing abilities of the seal Schneider, revealing the undoubtedly dead form of Zamari. Ishida retrieved the seal Schneider, deactivating it and storing it in his belt once more, watching as Zamari faded away. Sensing Ichigo nearby, Ishida Ryu once again used his high-speed technique to rejoin them. Ishida, Ichigo greeted. How was he? I take it was he is a bit of a pushover, given your complete lack of wounds. Pathetic, the Quincy scoffed. Though he might have given you trouble. Ichigo growled at the insult, and was about to retort when his rival continued. I was perhaps the worst kind of opponent he could have come up against. He had the ability to wrest control of one's body away from you. Like I said, Kurosaki, he might have given you trouble. One hit from that move and your precious Bankai would be slitting your own throat. I was only able to counter it with a Quincy technique. Ichigo's mouth clamped shut audibly. Fine. Well, we have everyone now, he said, changing the subject. Let's go home. Seeing the nods of his friends, he put on his Jillian mask and ripped open a garganta, jumping in. His comrades swiftly followed. Aizen Sosuke frowned. He'd lost to Espada, the Septima and the Noveno, and there had been no casualties on his enemy's side. Hell, no one had even been seriously injured. In addition, the girl had escaped, and their entire force was returning to the human world to guard it. He hadn't expected that Kurosaki brat to be able to open a garganta just as effortlessly as Aizen's Espada. That meant that the living world would have more powerful fighters waiting for him to invade. Looks like that substitute Shinigami's made some powerful friends, Aizen-sama. Jin commented. He didn't even fight at all. Indeed. Does this change our plan at all? Chusen asked from behind Aizen's throne. Number. Be ready to leave as soon as the Taicho from Soul Society invade. I hope you're ready, Kurosaki Ichigo. He smiled. I look forward to crushing you once again, and then sacrificing your entire town in front of you. Chapter 15. Gathering the Forces. That was easier than I expected, Renji admitted as he and his companions made their way through the void between worlds that made up Ichigo's Garganta. Rukia led the way, her expert control over her Reiatsu creating a stable path for everyone to run on. Ishida sped alongside them using his Harenkyaku. What, you were expecting a series of epic battles? Rukia asked with a smirk. Sort of, yeah, I know what you mean, Renji, Ichigo agreed, having taken off his mask upon entering the Garganta. I thought for sure Aizen would do more to keep Inoue, to low-level Espada. Seriously, I alone was equal to the Sexta Espada, with you guys he should have at least included Ulquiorra or higher. Aizen most likely did not anticipate Inoue being able to escape, Ishida pointed out. And while Araniero was trying to fool us, the best lies contain elements of truth. Aizen probably did tell all the Espada to wait in their chambers for us. If Inoue hadn't escaped, then we would have had to infiltrate Las Noches and then fought many of them. That said, the Espada he did send were well chosen, Ichigo said thoughtfully. Someone who could pass as a Shinigami that was close to Rukia, and someone whose power was to take control of others, perfect for infiltrating and then killing us all. He was obviously prepared for the possibility of Inoue escaping. Chad nodded. We should not question good fortune. Let us simply hurry back to Karakura, to aid the fight against Aizen. Hopefully we won't get into too much trouble with Soul Society, Renji murmured. Relax, Ichigo said reassuringly. Would Yamamoto punish you now, when he needs all the able-bodied Shinigami he can get? Especially ones who can take out Espada, or have achieved Bankai. Besides, we never technically broke any orders, Rukia reminded her friends. We were ordered to return to Soul Society. We did, and then we came back. I'm just glad we're all okay, Inoue breathed with a sigh, having been woken up by Rukia while Ishida had battled his opponent. I can't wait to get home, I could use a shower and some food. Speaking of, do you think that Yamamoto Saotaicho has already sent a few of the Taicho to Hueco Mundo, and moved everyone else to Karakura? Rukia asked. Maybe, Renji answered slowly. We were gone for what, an hour? Maybe 2. Sounds about right, Ishida agreed. I don't know for sure, but given what Urahara told us, Renji began, before taking a breath. We probably left Hueco Mundo at the same time as Soul Society's strike force arrived there. Okay, Ichigo acknowledged. If that's true, then it's a safe bet to say that Aizen will attempt to trap them there and move the majority of his forces to Karakura. What's the best way to trap the Taicho in Soul Society? It would depend on the Taicho, Rukia told him. As you have probably already guessed, every Taicho has different specialties. Renji shook his head. No, the easiest way to trap them in Soul Society is to wear them down. One strong opponent, or waves of weaker Arankars, they may be easy to defeat, but even the Taicho have limited amounts of Reiatsu. They'd also come across a problem leaving Hueco Mundo, Ishida realized. They'd need some way to signal to Soul Society for an exit, or someone else with the ability to open a Garganta. It's possible they're relying on Urahara for that part, Ichigo suggested. He was able to open a way to Hueco Mundo. Maybe he gave them a device to open a way back, or to signal him. I could see that, Inoue piped up. They trusted Urahara-san with the super-secret way to protect all of Karakura so all the Taicho could fight at their full power, right? I don't think they'd trust the one man with so much, the archer disagreed. Technically, Urahara Kazuki is an outcast, exiled, remember. He has no obligation or loyalty to them. Asking him for so much would be putting themselves in his mercy. They would have to have something he wants very badly to do that. What do you mean? Ichigo asked, not understanding where Ishida was going with this. Think, Kurosaki. Urahara was banished from Soul Society when he was framed by Aizen for giving the Vizard hollow powers, remember? Ishida unnecessarily reminded his rival. Put yourself in his shoes. You would feel betrayed, maybe even a little angry. He's had 100 years. The wizard argued. You said it yourself, Kurosaki. To a Shinigami, 100 years isn't that long, not when they live for thousands of years, Ishida said grimly. We also know that he's the founder of the Technology Bureau at Soul Society. Urahara's genius is even acknowledged by Soul Society, who asked him to find a way to protect Karakura while they fought. They respect his intelligence more than anyone's. His voice lowered, and an intelligent man knows how to make the system work for him. They need him, but he doesn't need them, Ichigo breathed. Precisely. Like I said, Urahara is a businessman, and if I'm right, holds no love for the society who banished him. He must have exacted a price for his assistance in protecting all Karakura instead of just his own house, and for assisting the Taicho to go to Hueco Mundo. And he's not afraid to withhold information or twist circumstances to his advantage, like he did when we were preparing to invade Soul Society and he didn't tell us about the Hogyuku. Ishida shook his head. No, Soul Society must have its own way to get back. Perhaps they sent along Kuretsuchi Mayuri, the new head of the Technology Bureau, Renji added darkly. If anyone would have a way to get back, or be able to figure out one, he's got the mad brilliance to do it. The Quincy pursed his lips at the man's name, but said nothing. He would never be able to forgive the man who had arranged for his grandfather's death simply so he could study the man's Quincy powers. All right, we're almost there, Rukia announced. Everyone ready? The grunts of agreement and the soul, yep. From Inoue almost made Rukia roll her eyes as they leapt through, arriving once more in the basement of Urahara's shop. Everyone was silent for a moment, before Ichigo laughed aloud, making everyone stare at him. We made it. We saved Inoue easily, and we made it back. This was so much easier than saving Rukia. Idiot. Rukia smacked him upside the head, but a smile was on her face as well. You barely did anything. To be fair, Renji pointed out, there were only 2 enemies to be fought, and you called one of them. And without Ichigo, we wouldn't have been able to get back easily. This is no time to be celebrating, Ishida said sternly. It is still likely that Aizen will attack in the very near future, we must be ready. Then let's get upstairs and see how things are, Ichigo proposed, and the group ran towards the ladder. Ishida was still flying on his Harenkyaku. They made it upstairs and almost ran into Urahara, who greeted them with a smile. Well done, the shopkeeper congratulated. And you even made it back in time for the party. Has Aizen invaded yet? The orange-haired Shinigami asked, straight to the point. Not yet. Did you kill any of the Espada while you were there? I killed Araniero, the Noveno Espada, Rukia answered. I finished off the Septima Espada, Zamari Laru, Ishida reported. By that time we had rescued Inoue, so we decided that we'd come back so we can protect Karakura, Ichigo explained. Excellent, and you are all unhurt. 2 down, 8 to go, Urahara said with his mischievous smile, not realizing that Rukia had healed her own minor wounds from Araniero. Oh, and Aizen, Tusen and Ichimaru. Who was sent to Hueco Mundo? Renji asked curiously. Unohana Taicho and 2 of her squad members, Kuretsuchi Taicho, Kuchiki Taicho and Kenpachi Taicho. Not a bad combination, Ichigo mused, recalling his epic fight with the leader of Squad 11. Sheer brutal strength and resilience in Kenpachi. Madness and intelligence with Kuretsuchi, Ishida added, remembering using his Quincy final form to annihilate the nigh insane Kuretsuchi, only to find that the Taicho would recover soon from his self-induced liquid state. Kido and speed with Nisama, Rukia whispered. And a few healers if necessary, Chad finished. The other Taicho. They'll be here in Karakura. Urahara chuckled. I suppose I shouldn't call it Karakura, considering it is only a replica. What? Inoue asked, confused. Oh, it's my version of protecting everyone from the full powers of the Taicho without revealing Soul Society, Urahara praised himself. Kuretsuchi Taicho built a very precise replica of Karakura on the outskirts of Soul Society, and I built a device that would swap the replica and the real thing. It's a variation of a Senkaimon, that I like to call Tenkai Ketchu. How does it work? Ichigo asked, curiously. And what happens to the people? Rukia piped up. Urahara smiled. It was nice to hear someone interested in his work. Well, like I said, it's based on a Senkaimon. Of course, we don't want it permanently in Soul Society, so I had to create a device that would hold it in a barrier in Soul Society until a condition is met. However, it takes a lot of power and stability to keep something like that going, and I needed a way to define how much area was going to be taken. So, with some help from Tessai, we created 4 enormous towers, linked through a variation of Kido. The 4 towers define how much area is going to be moved, in this case, all of Karakura, and the destruction of the towers triggers swapping the replica and the real town back by having the device lose its power. And the people? Ishida queried. They've been put into a special sleep that they won't wake from until we transfer them back. What about people who need medical attention? Ichigo asked, shocked. People who are dreadfully injured. People in hospitals who need periodic treatments. People in the middle of operations. What about people who are freaking driving and crash when they fell asleep suddenly? Relax, Ichigo, Urahara told him cheerfully. Ishida Ryukin went on the news and radio stations, stating that there was an airborne contagion with a relatively short half-life, a contagion that had infected all of Karakura, one that would put everyone to sleep at an approximate time. He heavily warned everyone to stop driving, get to a safe place, etc. He also said he'd brought in some people to oversee the hospital for the duration. Several unseated members of various squads did a quick patrol to make sure the roads were clear, and Squad 4 is overseeing the hospital with Ryukin's assistance. Ichigo sighed in relief, glad to see all the steps have been taken. So, I assume the rest of the Taicho are here already. Indeed they are, and a few others you may recognize as well, Urahara agreed. I was, sort of forced to stay behind, due to my exile from Soul Society. Are you going to be participating? Ishida asked him pointedly. Perhaps. Not immediately in any case, the exiled Shinigami answered. I don't think I'm particularly wanted or needed at this point. There are 6 Taicho out there, along with whomever they decided to bring along. The Vizard, Ichigo suddenly realized. Did they escape the replacement? Will they help? He frowned. There's no time for me to ask. Guys, we need to get up there with the rest of them, now, Ichigo commanded authoritatively. There's no way to know when Aizen will make his move, and we need to be ready. He turned to Inoue. I hate to say this, Inoue, seeing how far you have improved and everything, but your unique healing abilities may mean the difference between life and death. I'm sure some of us are going to need you soon. Please stay back. Inoue nodded firmly, not liking but understanding the request. Be careful, everyone. That settled, Ichigo swiftly passed his focus to Ishida. I realize you don't like Shinigami. Can you put that aside and work with them for the time being? Ishida frowned, but nodded his agreement. There is little choice in any event. If I wish to help, I must work with people who make up the primary force. Ichigo turned to his best friend, Chad. Do you know how to airwalk yet? No, it's relatively simple. Simply focus your Reiatsu into the air beneath you to create a solid base to stand on. Think you can manage? Chad gave a small smile, silently activating his arms. If it's that simple, there is no problem. My arms' attacks require similar control over my Reiatsu. Seeing determined faces on his team, the substitute Shinigami nodded in acknowledgement. Then let's go. They ran out through Urahara's front door and simultaneously flickered up, above the action, up to where Yamamoto's forces were. Kurosaki Ichigo, Yamamoto greeted in his usual tone. I expected you to be in Hueco Mundo by now, rescuing your comrade. Seeing Renji and Rukia, Yamamoto's eyes opened a sliver further from their usual nigh-closed state. But I see that you must have already done so. Yes, Yamamoto Jii. She is currently waiting with Urahara-san, ready to heal anyone who requires medical attention, Ichigo responded. With that done, we wanted to help defend our town. I see. Soifun Shunpo ed next to their group. Kurosaki, are you aware that you and your fellow Ryoka are the only ones of significant power who have not seen the traitor Aizen's Shikai? I am. Are you aware of the significance? Ichigo scowled. You guys suspect you're still under Kyoka Suigetsu's influence. That means you want me, Ishida and Chad to handle Aizen. Now it was Soifun's turn to scowl. I would gladly kill him, given the chance, but I must concede that it is not wise for me to test myself against his illusions and his skill. Whatever. Fine, We'll take care of Aizen. Ichigo's face hardened as he continued darkly. I owe him a taste of my steel anyway. Be careful, Ichigo, Zangetsu warned. I know, Zangetsu. Been a hell of a day, Find out that Inoue's been kidnapped, risk it all to get my body back, go back to Karakura for backup, return to Hawako Mundo, rescue her from Tua Espada, come back and find out that it's time for the final battle. Indeed. But remember, you have a trump card, your Ajuka's mask. Use it sparingly, we have no idea how long your body can tolerate it at this point. Got it. While Ichigo was conversing with his Zanpakuto, Chad found the airwalk to be relatively easy, actually. It was hardly even draining on his Reiatsu when he had both his arms activated, like he had now. I wonder, why would Aizen come here now? He murmured aloud. There are many opponents here, but only 4 Taicho level in Hawako Mundo. He shouldn't know that we have substituted Karakura or brought the rest of the Taicho here, yet, Ishida answered from beside him. Assuming that, he should take the opportunity to leave Hawako Mundo to come here and take advantage of our weakness, probably by bringing a number of his Espada to keep us busy while he sacrifices Karakura to acquire the King's Key. After all, we shouldn't be as strong as 4 experienced Taicho. An excellent analysis, Ishida-san, a calm, easygoing voice commented from behind the Quincy. He whirled to see Kiraku Shunsui. Hello, Kiraku-san, Chad greeted with a smile. Ah, Sato-kun, Shunsui said, delighted. I see you've gotten much stronger, he observed, waving a hand at Chad's improved arms. I have. Let us hope it's enough, the human with hollow-like powers said grimly. Oi, Ichigo, Akaku. Ichigo was disturbed from his musings when the bald member of Squad 11 approached him. Madarame Akaku grinned fiercely. Good to see ya, Ichigo. Ichigo gave the man a grin of his own. You too, Akaku. Bet you're going to have fun. We'll be fighting some very strong people. You bet that large sword of yours, I'm looking forward to it. Akaku agreed enthusiastically. I'm guarding that pillar over there. He pointed towards one not far away. Can't let it get destroyed, otherwise the real Karakura comes back. Oh, that'll get you some strong opponents for sure, Ichigo commented. Who all's guarding the pillars? Let's see. Yumashika's on that one over there, Hisagi's got that one, and Kira's on the last one. Ichigo frowned pensively. I know them all. Then again, that's to be expected. Yumashika and Akaku are part of Kenpachi's division, and the other 2 are lieutenants. Plastering a smile on his face, the substitute Shinigami made an excuse and left, returning to Yamamoto's group of Shinigami, this time seeing who all he knew. Let's see, all the Taicho are here. Anyone else? He recognized Matsumoto Rangaku, along with Iba Tetsuzeman, the lieutenants of Hitsugaya Taicho and Komamura Taicho respectively. There was a familiar one as well standing next to Soifun. A ripping sound snapped Ichigo's attention to it. A garganta was opening in the air. Reacting swiftly, Ichigo drew Zangetsu, feeling his partner thrum with power. Ready, Zangetsu. I am ready, Ichigo. Do not let your heart waver. Do not hesitate. Crush your enemies, so we may rest and view the sunset of the aftermath. I look forward to seeing it with you, Zangetsu. From the garganta stepped forward Aizen, followed by Tusen and Jin, and then by over a dozen Arankar, only a few of whom Ichigo recognized. Grimmjow, Neutra, Ulquiorra, that's the 6th, 5th and 4th Espada respectively. He scowled. Damn it, he didn't bring Yami along. That means Ulquiorra is still on his side. It is unfortunate, but that is how it is. It looks like he's brought just about all of his Espada and their fraction, Ichigo murmured loud enough for his side to hear. Yami isn't, though. He's probably still in Hawako Mundo to fight the Taicho you sent there. So this is indeed the final battle, Yamamoto rumbled. Aizen smiled. Ah, it seems you've performed an interesting trick, replacing Karakura with a cheap replica. It's no matter, I'll simply have to travel to Soul Society and make the King's Key there. His smile grew just a fraction more. After, of course, my forces eliminate you all. Should we go after the leader first? Iba asked his Taicho, Komamura. Komamura shook his head very slightly. No, Aizen's powers are one of a kind. We should take out his forces so we can concentrate on him. Only problem with that is that we have no guarantee that Aizen won't interfere with our fights with the Espada, Hitsugaya reminded them all, Rangaku agreeing softly. If Aizen's powers work off hypnosis, then perhaps we should make it so he cannot see the world around us to use its effect, Ishida pointed out, trying to analyze the situation. Everyone, please move back, Yamamoto told everyone. Everyone did so just as Yamamoto's Reiatsu suddenly skyrocketed, forming an aura of flame all around him. Everyone working to protect Karakura, aside from Kyoraku and Yukitake, widened their eyes in mild surprise that their commander was making the opening move. The Saotaicho's wooden staff dissolved, revealing a simple katana under the wood with a purple handle and a circular hand guard. Reduce all creation to ash, Ryujin Jaka. The sword itself erupted into flame, and an inferno raged around Yamamoto, making everyone jump even further away. He wasted no time swinging Ryujin Jaka, sending an enormous wave of fire at Aizen. Less than a second later, Aizen, Chusen and Jin were surrounded by a sphere of flame, but the Arankar were untouched. Jukaku Enju, Yamamoto spoke, satisfied as he resealed his sword. Aizen won't be getting out of there for a while. Now, to crush them. Ichigo stood agape, in awe of Yamamoto's sheer destructive power. Such terrifying power, and he doesn't even look winded. He didn't even use Bankai. Just how strong is he? He didn't realize he'd uttered his thoughts aloud until Kyoraku was by his side and quietly answering his question. Yama-Jii is the oldest Shinigami in Soul Society, and he wields the strongest fire-type Zanpakuto, Ryujin Jaka. You'll find that most older Shinigami do not use their Bankai unless absolutely necessary, preferring to rely on their Shikai. It is considered a mark of high skill to have Bankai, but even higher to have Bankai but never have to use it. It was considered a very big deal when you demonstrated your ability to break 3 lieutenants, Shikai with nothing but your bare hands with no apparent effort, Yukitake continued where his friend left off. That's usually a strong indicator that you have the ability to defeat a low-level Taicho if you master your Shikai. It's very likely that one day you will be as strong as Yamamoto Saotaicho. And if you continue to progress at the rate you've shown, that day will come sooner than you think. Ichigo's attention was once more redirected to the opposing force when one of the Arankar, presumably an Espada, began to speak. He was noticeably old, but solidly built, rather stocky with white hair being held back by his bone fragment, which was in the shape of a 5-pointed crown. He also had a thick white mustache, and his face was lined with scars, including one over his right eye. The Espada wore a white leather coat, with a black fur lining, but the coat had very short sleeves, revealing the Espada's muscular arms and golden wristbands. What do we have here? The Espada asked, with a note of curiosity in his voice. Our enemies are numerous, and the boss is stuck in there. I think you underestimate Aizen, Baragan, another Arankar responded. This Arankar was a dark-skinned woman, with short messy blonde hair. To Ichigo's minor embarrassment, her Arankar outfit was oddly cut. It covered the lower half of her face, and extended down so only a significant portion of the lower half of her breasts was covered. There was also a zipper, and Ichigo thought for a second that her power involved seduction of some sort. Her sleeves extended all the way to her hands, which were covered in black gloves. Her Arankar leggings had no changes from the norm worthy of note, and she wore her Zanpakuto horizontally on her upper back. And I think you underestimate me, Harabel, the now-named Baragan answered indifferently. He snapped his fingers, and 6 of the Arankar proved themselves his fraction by quickly coming to attention and unveiling a throne of bone out of nowhere. Baragan seated himself. With the boss unable to move, I'll be giving the orders, he announced, before narrowing his open eye and adding darkly, you better not have a problem with that. Sure, why not? A tall Arankar with mid-length wavy brown hair, and a necklace made from his hollow mask remnant of a lower jaw, said lazily right before being kicked in the leg by a young-looking girl whose horned mask had a stump on the left horn. Ow, what are you doing, Lillinette? That hurt. Ichigo's sweat dropped. If I'm not mistaken, that's an Espada. Maybe Espada dos, since that Baragan guy took control easily. And he's being kicked around by his fraction. Apparently Ishida was thinking similar thoughts. How shameful. His thoughts were echoed by another young-appearing Arankar, with 3 pink stars above her left eye. Her hollow mask, a set of upper teeth, was held in a comb-like fashion in her short black hair. Seeing the girlish attributes, including the pretty face, Ichigo and company were a little surprised to hear a boy's voice come out when the Arrancar said, "Geez, an espada being picked on by his own Frashin." "Shut it, Loopy," Lilinet barked. "Make me, Frashin." "Oh, sorry, I forgot that I'm an espada and you're just Stark's puppy." "Know your place, Loopy," Barragan ordered. "You may be an espada now that a position opened up, but you are merely a Septima espada, and I am not as forgiving as the boss." Loopy was very noticeably quiet after that. "Now, on to business. The boss said that this place is a fake, that it's been replaced with a replica in Soul Society," the old man who'd taken charge mused. "But do we really need to go there?" He gestured towards the pillars. "It's obvious the pillars here are somehow keeping the replica here and the real Karakura in Soul Society. So, what happens if we destroy those pillars?" He nodded to himself. "Findor." "Yes, sir." He brought his right hand to his mouth. Somehow, that was a signal for 4 garganta to open, one right by each pillar. A large hollow appeared from each one, lunging for the pillars. Barragan sat back in his chair, amused. "We know where the pillars are. These places always have bridges on the north, south, east and west sides. If we destroy the pillars, then the real Karakura will return, and become our battleground." "Oh shit, they know." Omaeda, a rather rotund Shinigami that Ichigo vaguely recognized from very early on in his invasion of Soul Society to rescue Rukia, cried out to his Taicho, Soifin. Yamamoto looked on, undisturbed by the events. He opened his mouth enough to say just one word: "Fools." In that instant, the hollows were destroyed, sliced away by the defenders of the towers. The Espada were highly surprised, and even Stark looked shocked by the turn of events. "Do you really think that we'd leave such important locations unprotected? I've stationed skilled warriors there." Ichigo looked on with a smirk. "Come on, did you trade your common sense for power here? Of course the towers are gonna be protected." Barragan scoffed. "Fine, if you have sent ants to protect the pillars, I should send dragons to crush them." "Po, Cool Horn, Aburama, Findor," his tone turned commanding, brutal and ruthless. "Crush them." "Yes sir." The 4 Frashin Barragan had named leapt out towards each of the pillars, flickering into Sonido. "Kurosaki Ichigo." Ulquiorra stepped forward, his indifferent expression never changing. "I see you have returned from your hollow state." Ichigo scowled, feeling the combined glares and stares of his allies who had not known the truth. "I have, and I am stronger than ever," he replied coolly. "Is that so?" Ulquiorra shifted his attention to Chad. "Sato Yasutora, you have said that your arms are manifestations of your feelings, your will." "They are. I expect you to show me how strong your feelings are in the coming battle, or I will kill you myself." Ulquiorra's expression never changed. Chad looked at the 4th Espada defiantly. "Don't worry, you'll see them." Ichigo glanced at Chad, and hoped he'd be alright. Scanning through the Arrancar, he saw one whose focus was centered upon him. "Got a problem, Grimjow." That seemed to snap him out of it. "Kurosaki." Grimjow roared. "Fight me." Ichigo gripped Zangetsu with a smirk. "Fine then. Bring it." "I'll face whoever wants to fight me," Loopy called out. "Multiple opponents are fine too." When Rukia, Renji, Ishida and Rangaku all appeared in front of him, the new Septima Espada smiled. 4 on 8, Sounds fun." He turned into a hollow. Yamamoto rumbled angrily. "How can that be? I can see him right now, and every sense I have says that he is a Shinigami." "Ah, Yama-jii," Shunsui began placatingly, "we do know he has hollow powers not willingly given to him. It's probably an unforeseen consequence." "It only lends credit to what I've been saying all along," Soifin insisted. "He became a hollow. Even if he is a Shinigami today, making him stronger will only make our fight more difficult when he betrays us all and loses control permanently." "Soifin, you know that's not fair," Yukitaki scolded. "It's not like he joined Aizen or anything. If he had, don't you think Aizen would have used the Haugyuku to keep him in that hollow form and on his side, rather than on ours?" "It does prove troublesome," Hitsugaya murmured. "However, I believe Kurosaki Ichigo will not lose to his hollow again." Yamamoto opened his eyes at Hitsugaya, a silent challenge. The ice user sighed, and prepared for a verbal chewing out. From what I understand of Urahara's explanations, Kurosaki Ichigo's hollow powers are manifested internally by what he would have been had he turned into a hollow, much like our Zanpakuto are manifested internally by their spirits. Further, Kurosaki needs to fight what is essentially himself periodically in order to keep himself from degenerating into a hollow. And you did not suspect that Kurosaki Ichigo had become a hollow? Yamamoto asked, his words hard as steel. I suspected, but Urahara maintained that Yoruichi was training him. Saotaicho, Hitsugaya responded smoothly. Without any evidence, I would rather not cast shadow on anyone who may not deserve it. After all, Kurosaki Ichigo and his friends did Soul Society a great service, did they not? Very well, you have asserted that Kurosaki will not become a hollow once more. Explain. Yes, Saotaicho, I can only speculate, but I would presume that Kurosaki's hollow self fled to Hueco Mundo and underwent hollow evolution there. If they are anything alike in terms of gaining power quickly, definitely to Jillian, or possibly Ajuka's. If Kurosaki is in control now, he must have challenged and beaten his inner hollow at its most powerful yet. He will only grow stronger. Hitsugaya looked directly into Yamamoto's orbs. Kurosaki Ichigo is not a threat to Soul Society. I concede that he may need watching during those times that he fights his inner hollow, but I believe he has proven himself determined and powerful enough to keep that inner hollow at bay. Besides, shouldn't we give him some leeway? Advanced hollow powers might be just the edge he needs to defeat Aizen, and he is the only one with Taicho-class Reiatsu who has not seen Aizen's Shikai. No one can win every fight, especially against himself, Komamura protested. Even so, don't we owe him the benefit of the doubt? Shunsui argued. Is this really an appropriate conversation to have at this time? Yukataki asked with an embarrassed smile on his face. Aizen and his forces are still here. That seemed to bring everyone back to reality, and they turned to regard the assortment of Arrancar. Are you quite done, Shinigami? Barrigan asked, sounding rather irritated. Good. Now it seems that 3 Espada have chosen their opponents. Anyone else? Neutra stepped forward, holding his precious Santa Teresa in front of him threateningly. I bet not a single one of you can cut me. My Hierro is the strongest of the Espada. Is it just me or does he sound like Kenpachi? Shunsui murmured under his breath. Soifun smirked as though she had already won. I've wanted to kill Kenpachi for a long while, this idiot'll prove a nice substitute. I'll take you on, she called. A woman, Neutra screamed angrily. Why is it always a fucking woman who accepts my challenges? Neutra-sama, please be careful, a male blonde Arrancar with a strange diagonal blue mark on his left cheek asked respectfully. He was slim, with a small bone fragment appearing on his forehead in a circlet. He also wore an eye patch on his right eye, apparently mirroring Neutra's own eye patch over his left. Shut the hell up, Tesla. And don't interfere with my battles. Same goes to you, Soifun warned her lieutenant, Omeda Marekio. Taicho. Omeda cried out in protest, but acknowledged the order even as he turned to Tesla, readying his Zanpakuto. Fine then, I'll have to deal with this guy then. Tesla merely smiled. Barrigan looked on impassively as the 4 of them left for a separate part of Karakura, so as not to be interrupted. Espada 7 through 4 have now chosen their opponents. Haribel, Stark. I don't care. I think I'll wait and see if your Frashin finish them. Maybe I won't have to do anything, Stark responded lazily. I believe I shall wait as well, Barrigan, Haribel responded. Not all of us are as bloodthirsty as Neutra. So be it, Barrigan boomed, carefully paying close attention to how his Frashin were doing by way of his Reiatsu sense. Having arrived at the silently agreed upon spot above the fake Karakura, Ichigo felt the adrenaline coursing through his body in time with his heartbeat, which seemed unnaturally loud to him. Every beat sounded as the beat of a war drum, and with every beat of that drum he felt the primal lust for battle grow within him. With a flash of insight, Ichigo realized why it felt so much stronger now. We're playing for keeps. He won't hesitate to kill me. His grip on Zangetsu's hilt tightened. I've never killed someone who looks so very human, but I can't afford to hesitate. Kurosaki, you humiliated me by injuring my resurrection. Grimjow's solemn voice somehow made itself heard, distracting Ichigo from the sound of his own heartbeat. Allow me to show you how much stronger I have become. He lunged at his opponent with Sonido, his spiky blue hair pulled back from the air pressure. Ichigo blocked Grimmjow's vicious swipe with Zangetsu, though his Zanpakuto buckled under the pressure. You have grown stronger, the wizard acknowledged. But so have I. Obviously. The Arrancar agreed with a bloodthirsty grin even as he leapt back to avoid a decapitating strike from his orange-haired enemy. Before, that strike would have cleaved right through that pretty cleaver of yours. Hardening his resolve, Ichigo's eyes glowed blue with spiritual power as he began to spin Zangetsu to his right side, charging a Getsuga for use later. He wanted to save Bankai for when Grimmjow used Resurrection. Then it's a good thing you're just a pussy cat at heart. The Espada saw red. I'm a panther, you fucking strawberry. Grimmjow used Sonido to appear at Ichigo's left side, hoping to capitalize on the opening he'd perceived. Ichigo had anticipated that, however, using Shunpo to disappear and reappear directly behind Grimmjow, swinging his Zanpakuto. Getsuga Tenshou. Never let it be said, however, that Grimmjow was slow. He remembered that move quite well, and so he drew his Zanpakuto with all the speed he had and blocked the Getsuga-enhanced Zangetsu with it. In his other hand, however, Grimmjow had charged a Sero, which he then fired at Ichigo. Ichigo had seen the red glow a moment before the hollow attack had been fired, but didn't have enough time to fully escape or block the onslaught. The powerful Sero burned hotly against his hands even as he used a Getsuga-enhanced Zangetsu to deflect the majority of it away from himself. As the Sero faded, Ichigo gathered his own attack. Hado 4. Byakurai, he murmured under his breath, spinning around and throwing out his right hand, pointing his fingers at his opponent so Grimmjow wouldn't see the pale off-white Kido past the fading red of his Sero until it was too late. It worked. The Sexta Espada had almost no warning before the white-hot lightning pierced him in the shoulder, leaving a hole the size of a nickel. Ichigo had aimed for his torso, but Grimmjow had managed to dodge somewhat at the last moment. The injury managed to enrage Grimmjow further. Before, Kurosaki had needed Bankai to even keep up with him in his unreleased state. Now, however, the orange-haired substitute was somehow scoring hits, cutting him in his Shikai. Ichigo took in a deep breath, sending what little hollow Reiatsu circulated in his Shinigami form towards his hands to heal his burns slowly, using Kido with burned hands hurt like a bitch. He looked up as he felt Grimmjow's Reiatsu spike. Oh boy, here we go. Not again. You will not humiliate me again, boy. Grind, Pantera. And that's my cue, Ichigo muttered. Bankai. Ulquiorra eyed Chad's two activated arms dispassionately. Your Reiatsu is impressive for a human, he asserted. Thank you. I also acknowledge that you must be extremely strong despite your appearance, for you to be the Quarta Espada, Chad stated. Indeed. Ulquiorra paused, cocking his head to the side. I invite you to strike me with your most powerful technique on me. You are at your strongest now, yes. I am. Ulquiorra nodded. And I am at my weakest. I am not in Resurrection, and my sword is sheathed. Why do you want me to do this now? Chad asked. To show you the meaning of despair. No human can defeat me, Ulquiorra stated as though it were fact. However, it also serves a second purpose. We must both recognize that under normal circumstances, a human would be hard-pressed to defeat even the most basic hollow, correct? Given that humans typically cannot see them, and do not usually have the necessary strength or knowledge of how to defeat them, yes, the empowered human agreed tentatively. You have said that your power comes from your emotions. More specifically, your faith in your grandfather's preachings for your right arm. Your attack will provide excellent data for how much your emotion affects the strength of a human. Out of curiosity, what does your left strength come from? My will to attack. I see, the Quarta Espada acknowledged. And how strongly do you wish to attack me, to inflict pain upon me? At the moment, not very strongly at all, Chad confessed easily. Right now, we are having a civil conversation. Ulquiorra nodded slowly. I believe I can understand that. Does the fact that I am here to destroy your town and sacrifice it for Aizen-sama make any difference? Chad felt a flash of anger at the reminder. He said nothing, but the Arrancar saw the change in Chad's body language. Pursuing the lead, Ulquiorra decided to push the subject. I wonder what will happen to all the souls that are sacrificed to create the Haugyuku. He mused. I suppose they will be erased from existence. Chad's eyes widened. Keigo, Tatsuki, everyone. Allow me to provide a bit more incentive, Sato Yasutora, to wish to attack me. If you fail to injure me, I will personally remove your arms from you and force you to watch your comrades be sacrificed to the Haugyuku and removed from the cycle of reincarnation, Ulquiorra promised. That did it. Chad's rage could no longer be controlled. He dashed forward with all the speed of his Paso del Viento and slammed his left hand, blazing with power, into Ulquiorra's diaphragm. Lemuert, he cried out, creating an imprint of a skull with his Reiatsu all around the Quarta Espada, before punching Ulquiorra directly in the face with El Brazo Direct del Gigante. El Directo, an incredibly powerful blast rocketed out from his right arm, an order of magnitude stronger than his normal blasts. Ulquiorra went flying, but swiftly recovered, only to find Chad had used his speed technique to be once more in his face. Lemuert, Chad repeated, but this time his left arm found itself blocked by Ulquiorra using both hands to hold his wrist. That was impressively strong, Sato Yasutora, Ulquiorra stated with a cough. Chad noticed with some satisfaction that the Espada had coughed up a minor amount of blood. Thank you, but I'm not done yet. Chad's right arm slammed into Ulquiorra's head from the side in a truly brutal right hook, which made Ulquiorra stagger just long enough for Chad to complete his earlier technique. Like I was saying, Lemuert, Chad's left fist struck in a picture-perfect uppercut. Die. Ulquiorra was sent flying once again, but he used Sonido to reappear behind the empowered human. How astonishing. He paused to spit out some blood. I would never have expected any human to be able to injure me, even in this, my weakest form. Your emotions, combined with your power, make you this strong. He shook his head. If you master yourself and your power, you will truly be a force to be reckoned with. However, it is time for me to teach you the true meaning of despair. He drew his sword. Bind, Murcielago. Luffy looked around, seeing his four opponents, Ishida, Rangaku, Renji and Rukia. There's no way you can win against me, you know. And why is that? Rangaku asked, drawing her sword fluidly, ready to release it at any time. Her actions were mimicked by her fellow Shinigami, while the lone Quincy among them summoned his bow. Yeah, if you can't be beat, then why aren't you the Primera Espada? Ishida pointed out with a smirk. Fuck you, Luffy yelled, inordinately angered by the barb, before suddenly smiling again and leering at Rangaku. Speaking of, perhaps I will save that big-boobed one for later. His smile grew. Yeah, that's gonna be fun. Unlike that girl who looks like she hasn't hit puberty yet. I mean, seriously, you look like you're flat as a washboard. Wouldn't want you if Aizen-sama paid me for it. Oh, sorry. Rangaku felt a very sudden urge to take a scalding shower, feeling very dirty having her enemy's eyes on her that way. Meanwhile, Rukia's eyes twitched as both Renji and Ishida backed away, feeling her Reiatsu spike with a murderous intent. Only Renji could see that his longtime friend was muttering something. Straining his ears, he could barely hear. Flutter of wings, ye who bears the name of man. That was enough for the tattooed Shinigami. Rukia was probably using either Sukatsui or Shakuho. But her next words confused him. Carriage of thunder. Bridge of a spinning wheel. With light, divide this into 6. What? Renji thought to himself, confused. That's the incantation of Bakudo 61. Raikujokuro. Ah, did I hurt your feelings? Luffy asked mockingly, drawing his sword and waving it at the girl, seeing Rukia's quiet talking and mistaking it as talking to herself. Well, who the fuck cares what one flat-chested bitch thinks? Renji, however, heard Rukia continue. On the wall of blue flames, inscribe a twin lotus. In the abyss of conflagration, wait at the far heavens. Rukia looked up and glared at the espada before them. Bakudo 61. Raikujokuro. Luffy, caught by surprise, found himself bound by the 6 rods of light, unable to move. What the hell? He demanded. I'm not done yet, the ice-wielding Shinigami cried out. Hado 63. Soren Sukatsui. Blue flames gathered at the end of her palm just before she thrust it towards her opponent. Luffy, seeing the Kido blast swiftly approaching, and bound as he was, knew he had only one option. He was just glad he had drawn his sword earlier. Strangle, Trepidora. Chapter 16. What makes us hollow? Grimjow growled ferociously at Ichigo. Resurrection against Bankai. I'm going to rip you to shreds," he promised with a psychotic grin that reminded Ichigo of Cazador de la Luna. "Just try it, kitty cat," Ichigo taunted, wasting no time spinning Tensa Zangetsu by the chain on his finger to charge up another Getsuga. Grimmjow roared at the insult, but Ichigo was thrown off balance when he felt the roar create a shockwave in the air he stood upon. The Espada lunged at him with all the speed of his Resurrección, trying to take advantage of Ichigo's being off guard. Ichigo quickly leapt out of the way, though it was a close thing. Grimmjow was noticeably, but not overwhelmingly, faster than the Shinigami. "Last time, I needed the mask to keep up," Ichigo's frown settled firmly upon his face. "No, I don't need the mask for this. I do not need to rely on my hollow powers for every fight." He felt Zangetsu's approval at this thought, which only further solidified his stance. "Is that it?" he asked in as bored a tone as he could manage. Ichigo found himself blocking a strike from Grimmjow's right claw with Tensa Zangetsu, but he quickly knocked his opponent back with the pent-up Getsuga Tenshou. At the same time, however, Ichigo had gotten a brutal kick to the side, pushing him into the side of a building. Grimmjow caught the Getsuga with his elbow blades and was pushed into another nearby building, but a moment later he forced the attack to dissipate. During his opponent's momentary distraction, Ichigo was not just standing and waiting, trying to finish it quickly. He decided to give Kido a shot again. Knowing he couldn't afford the incantation, the wizard attempted the most powerful Hado at his disposal. Throwing out his left arm, palm facing the quickly recovering Grimmjow, he cried out, "Hado 63, Soren Sukatsui." The blast struck true, and Ichigo tried to peer through the smoke to see his enemy. "Bit slow, aren't ya, Kurosaki Ichigo?" Ichigo used Shunpo just in time to evade being disemboweled by Grimmjow. He reappeared several meters away. "You used Sonido to evade that Kido," Ichigo realized with a scowl. "You're fast, for a Shinigami." Grimmjow's scowl matched Ichigo's. "Pull out that damn mask of yours, I want to fight you when you're at your strongest." "Not a chance, Grimmjow." Grimmjow looked incredulous for a moment, and then furious. "You're going to fight me, and you hope to kill me, with a fucking handicap. Don't insult me." He took a bracing stance, with his left foot behind him, and raised his right arm. Ichigo couldn't help but notice the blades that curved upwards from the Arrancar's elbows and knees. He was caught by surprise, however, when from the elbow blades came several small projectiles. His surprise didn't keep him from using Shunpo repeatedly to evade the absurdly fast darts. When explosions sounded from behind him, Ichigo was not surprised at all. Instead, he tried to take a leaf out of Byakuya's book. Ichigo Shunpo-ed right behind Grimmjow, watching for the whip-like tail, and stabbed backwards just as Byakuya had done to him so long ago to destroy his borrowed powers from Rukia so Ichigo could not interfere with her execution in Soul Society. Mentally slapping himself for getting caught in memories in the middle of battle, Ichigo refocused on Grimmjow. Unfortunately, his distraction had cost him. The tail managed to deflect Tensa Zangetsu, so Ichigo used the momentum of his stab to push himself away, narrowly avoiding a vicious swipe from Grimmjow's claw. However, he hadn't seen the Sexta Espada charge up a Acero in his other hand, which came hurtling at him like a rocket. It was too close to dodge. The orange-haired wizard was forced to bring Tensa Zangetsu to bear and slice down on the Acero. Getsuga Tenshou. The Acero and the Getsuga raged against each other for several moments before the Getsuga was engulfed by the raging red of the Acero. Ichigo shielded his body as best he could, hardening his Reiatsu to take as much damage as it could. When the Acero faded, Ichigo's hands and arms were burned once again, and there were tears in his Bankai outfit, but he was okay. "You're really pissing me off," he muttered, right before his instinct screamed at him. Just in time, Ichigo spun and managed to catch Grimmjow's right claw by the wrist right in front of his face. "Put on your damn mask," Grimmjow demanded. Ichigo glared at the Espada, but even as he opened his mouth to respond, both of them were distracted by the distinct ripping sound of a garganta opening. They looked, and Ichigo's eyes widened. Nell. Nell came to see Ichigo. The child ex-Espada said with a smile that stretched from ear to ear. Her Frashin, Dondochaka and Pesci, saw Grimmjow and immediately jumped in front of her. "Nell-sama, we might want to leave, it looks like Ichigo is busy," Pesci tried to reason. Grimjow's face slowly gained a smirk as he realized what a card he had on his opponent. So, you care about that girl. He used his free hand and jutted his elbow out at them, sending several explosive darts at them. Fuck, no choice. Releasing Grimjow's hand, Ichigo Shunpo-ed between them and in a fluid motion, ripped his Jillian mask into place adorning his face, pure white on the right side of the mask, thick red stripes on the left. Getsuga Tenshou. The darts were all obliterated by the massive crescent attack, and Grimjow barely managed to Sonito out of the way with wide eyes. You weren't nearly that strong before, he protested, gazing past the mask into Ichigo's hollow-like amber eyes. Aye Ichigo, Nell stuttered, beginning to feel fear as she realized that she had just dropped into the middle of a fight that felt disturbingly like a fight between two Espada. The Vizard's Reiatsu was overwhelming, especially so up close, and it was beginning to spark old memories. Nell could feel them, feel the block inside her crumbling swiftly. Then, the Reiatsu became too much for her, and she fainted, Dondochaka catching her. You wanted the mask, now you've got it. Ichigo appeared behind Grimjow, Tensa Zangetsu practically oozing with black Reiatsu. Grimjow used Sonito to evade a swing that would have permanently removed his legs from his torso, but realized belatedly that he'd received a serious slash to his back. His spine had been spared, thankfully. What's wrong? Ichigo taunted, spinning Tensa Zangetsu at his side once more to charge up another Getsuga. Where's your cocky fucking grin, Grim Chowder? Is little old me too much for you? Grimjow had no chance to reply, as Ichigo had suddenly thrown his sword at him, covered in the black Reiatsu of the Getsuga Tenshou. As he narrowly evaded the incoming Zanpakuto, the Espada barely blocked Ichigo's fist with his own claw. In that moment of contact, he saw Ichigo jerk back on the chain he held in his left hand. Realizing what it meant, the blue-haired Arankar brought his whip-like tail up and attempted to catch Tensa Zangetsu, only to feel the Getsuga burning and cutting through his tail like a dark flame hiding daggers. Using Sonito at the very last moment, Grimjow barely managed to escape with a deep slice to his back and tail, watching as Ichigo caught his sword. Giving up already, coward. You who demanded to face this demonic power of mine, stand up and fight me. Ichigo bellowed. Grimjow had two very conflicting urges at this point. First to flee from the Shinigami Hollow hybrid who could and would kill him, and the second to lunge at the being who would call him a coward. He never liked to admit this, but he knew he was no match for this monstrous hollowified form of Ichigo. How? He asked aloud, hating the fear that leaked into his voice. How have you grown so strong, so quickly? Shinigami and Hollow are two sides to the same coin, Ichigo intoned. Black and white, light and dark, one is meaningless without the other to fight against, but what happens when they work together? I have fought and bled to win both my Zanpakuto, and my mask, my Shinigami and Hollow power. I have grown strong because I have never stopped fighting, because I have loved ones to protect. He glared at Grimjow, pointing the glowing Getsuga-enhanced Tensa Zangetsu directly at his head, and Grimjow regretted attempting to kill the brat of an Arankar. The Espada half expected a spear to lunge out of Ichigo's Bankai sword and kill him in an instant, much like he'd seen Ichimaru Jin use his Shinso. Tensa Zangetsu here wants you to die just as badly as I do. Give me a good reason to spare you. Protect. That gave Grimjow an idea. Fine then, you've proven your strength. It's not shameful to lose to the man who will take down Aizen. And I'm not really loyal to Aizen anyway. How about I make sure those three Arankar you were protecting just now don't get hurt during the invasion? I'll be their bodyguard, because you can't protect them and kill that bastard at the same time. Just make damn sure Aizen's dead when this is all said and done. When everything's over, I'll go back to Hueco Mundo and stay there. Ichigo paused. That's actually not a bad deal. He lowered his sword, keeping the Getsuga in Tensa Zangetsu just in case. One more thing. Protect Urahara's shop down there. He proceeded to point it out. I have others down there that need protection, and that is our healing location. Are we agreed? Grimjow swallowed his pride visibly. Fine, I'll bring those Arankar down there and protect the place. In exchange, you let me go free after this battle, and I stay in Hueco Mundo. As far away from you as possible. Good, but know this, Grimjow Jagerjackez. If you fail to protect them, I will hunt you, tear you limb from limb, then have a friend of mine destroy your soul utterly. No chance at reincarnation, no rebirth, you'd be removed from existence itself. Ichigo's hollowified voice grew lower and even more threatening as he continued, his mask's mouth opening and closing with Ichigo's natural mouth, giving him the distinctly hollow double mouth effect. Am I understood? Grimmjow swallowed hard at those words. How could he not? His eternal existence was being threatened, not just his life. I understand. Kurosaki Ichigo. The wizard finally dispelled the Getsuga from Tensa Zangetsu, reabsorbing the Reiatsu. Removing his mask to conserve any potential time limits, and to keep his allies from attacking him, Ichigo nodded towards the Espada. Don't forget. He turned towards his friends and saw that Nell had collapsed. He shared a look with Pesci, both worried. Pesci, Dondochaka, follow Grimmjow. Take Nell to get healed. Right. For once, Pesci was deadly serious. They left swiftly. Ichigo turned away, forcing down the guilt he felt as he shunpoed away. Luffy's resurrection, at first glance, seemed to do little, despite having broken the Bakudo that held him enough for him to get away from Rukia's Hado 63, Soren Tsukatsui. The only thing that had changed on his body was a strange shell-like object on his back with 8 holes. However, when the object sprouted 8 enormous white tentacles, everyone understood what his earlier comment of 4 against 8 meant. It'd be foolish not to use our Shikai at this point, Rukia suggested. We have no idea how strong those appendages are. Right then, Howl, Zabumaru, Renji's Zanpakudo became his segmented thick-chain sword, and he swung it towards Luffy to get a feel for his strength. Luffy blocked it easily with just one of his tentacles, and Renji recalled Zabumaru to his hand, which he then used to block another tentacle that Luffy had sent at him. This tentacle had reshaped its ending into a spike, so Renji had to focus extra Reiatsu into keeping Zabumaru from breaking. Growl, Hineka, Rangaku's Zanpakudo dissolved into a cloud of ash, which she directed at Luffy, trying to take out the tentacles at their source, but immediately found herself caught up in one of Luffy's deceptively strong appendages, completely wrapped up and at his mercy. She concentrated on cutting the tentacle off to free herself. However, Rangaku was beat to the punch when Ishida punched through the tentacle with one of his powerful arrows. He used Harenkyaku next to her and used a Seal Schneider to cut through her binding, freeing the busy Shinigami from her bondage. Dance, Soda no Shirayuki. With a spin, Rukia's sword transformed into its glistening white released form, its ribbon trailing in its wake. Shunpo-ing to a spot underneath Luffy, she swung her sword horizontally, summoning Soda no Shirayuki's icy power. Some no mai, Tsukashiro. Luffy, who was unaccustomed to moving while in his released form, found himself completely caught by surprise when a pillar of ice formed around him. However, he could still control his tentacles to an extent, and used them to smash open the frozen prison. Before Luffy could do anything more, he saw and felt Ishida repeatedly piercing and cutting his tentacles with dozens of arrows, keeping him from using them to ensnare his foes again. With a frown, Luffy focused more of his power into the tentacles, covering them with spikes and using them as armor as he sent 3 of them after the Quincy, sending Ishida into bursts of Harenkyaku to evade. However, Rukia had an idea. San no mai, Shirafune, she intoned quietly, reforging her sword with the ice crystal remnants of her Tsukashiro. She lunged at Luffy, and predictably, he blocked with one of his tentacles. Rukia smirked as she felt her sword push past the spiky armor and begin to freeze the tentacle, the ice rapidly advancing towards Luffy himself. What? Luffy quickly hardened his Reiatsu and fired a balla at his tentacle where the ice had not yet touched, sending the frozen part to the ground while regrowing the appendage. Nice trick, you flat-chested bitch. Rukia glared at him before taking on a stance. Tsugi no mai, Hakuren. Luffy, Septima Espada, was many things, but stupid he was not. He used Sonido to get out of the way of the wave of ice, even though it tired him. He had grown his tentacles to extreme lengths, and the extra mass made it difficult to use the high-speed technique without his own resurrection slamming into him. However, his preoccupation left him easy pickings for the rest of the team. Several powerful arrows were shot from Ishida, forcing Luffy to use his extra limbs for blocking them. Meanwhile, the ash from Rangaku's Hineka quietly engulfed him, and then with a fell stroke, burrowed into the thing on Luffy's back and completely destroyed it, removing Luffy's tentacles from him. Renji used Luffy's shock to wrap him up in Zabumaru's blades, and Rukia Shunpo ed in front of Luffy, Soda no Shirayuki poised to stab him in the head. In case no one's ever told you this, you're a spoiled brat. And with that, Rukia's sword pierced Luffy's head, freezing him solid nigh instantly before he shattered. Now that that's over and done with, let's go help the others on the towers, Renji suggested. Nodding, the four of them split up to aid the four Shinigami on the towers. It doesn't matter what you look like, I'm going to rip that scrawny head of yours from your fucking shoulders. Chad promised, seeing Ulquiorra's new form. The Espada had sprouted giant black bat-like wings. His mask remnant had also changed, now centering over his head, with two large horns extending to his sides and in front. Ulquiorra's sword had changed shape, now taking the form of a simple javelin, and his hair had grown longer. Prepare yourself, Sato Yasutora. Acting on instinct, Chad raised his right arm in a blocking maneuver, just in time to block his opponent, who had seemingly materialized right in front of him. Wasting no time, the empowered human lunged out with El Brazo Izquierda del Diablo, powering up Lemuert. To Chad's surprise, the attack connected firmly against Ulquiorra, imprinting the skull pattern upon him and the air around him. He should have been able to evade that, given the speed he was going earlier. But it was only now that Chad realized that Ulquiorra appeared completely unharmed. Your attacks can no longer hurt me, Ulquiorra said calmly, confirming Chad's fear. How does that make you feel? Angry, Chad growled, charging up power in both fists. Ah yes, exchanging rationality for power, the bat-like Espada murmured, recalling his first encounter with Ichigo and his friends. I cannot fault you for the effort, you are quite strong, stronger than many high-level hollows. But your power is not sufficient to harm me at this level. You forget, my anger manifests in my will to cause you pain. Chad bellowed, rushing in with his Paso del Viento and plunging his fist into Ulquiorra's face. Lemuert, he lashed out with his right arm and struck Ulquiorra in the mouth. El Directo. Ulquiorra was sent flying, but he swiftly recovered before giving his opponent a measuring look. An interesting tactic. If my hierro is too strong, weaken an already weak area first and then attempt to blast through. You attempted to weaken the hierro around my face, and then fired one of your strongest blasts at my mouth, trying to destroy me from the inside out. No, I just wanted to take your head off, Chad admitted. Regardless, you succeeded in hurting me, however slightly, in this form. I would normally utilize my next level of power at this point, but I do not wish Aizen to know of it. I will do you the honor of defeating you at this level. You can try, the shaggy-haired human said darkly, getting in his battle stance. I will make this quick. Your emotions are a strength for you, but they are also a liability that you cannot afford. Ulquiorra raised a hand, and a Cerro formed, but this one was pitch black, seeming to absorb all light. This is my Cerro Oscuro. Chad readied himself, but was surprised when the Espada pointed it at Ichigo, who had just seemingly beaten Grimmjow. No. Somehow, Chad executed a faster Paso del Viento than he'd ever managed before, and materialized between Ulquiorra and Ichigo just as the emotionless Arrancar fired his deadly attack. He held his right arm, the stronger in defense, in front of him and braced it with his left, trying to endure the piercing, agonizing attack. Normally, a Cerro would simply explode against its victim or pierce through it, but Chad had coated his arms with as much Reiatsu as he could, keeping the Cerro at bay. However, he could feel the armor on his arm begin to crack and peel, and his Reiatsu was depleting dangerously quickly. It was only a matter of time before it was completely overwhelmed and he was vaporized. Abuelo, Chad thought in prayer. I'll see you soon in Soul Society, I hope. I had hoped to survive this confrontation, but if I had to die, I am glad it was to protect my Nakama. Without warning, he felt a pulse of Reiatsu from deep within him, and it flowed over his right arm. To Chad's astonishment, it was taking another shape. My arm's evolving now. Within seconds, Chad's arm had finished its next evolution. He wasn't able to look at it properly, given his preoccupation with the Cerro that was still trying to dig its way into him, but Chad could tell that his shoulder extension had disappeared, and the armor on his forearm had formed a shield of sorts. The shield rounded from the fist to the middle of his forearm, but then had parallel edges that made the shield extend further than his elbow before ending abruptly. Chad felt the newfound power of his newly upgraded arm, and instinctually channeled it towards the shield. He roared his strength and pushed with all his might, managing to deflect the Sero upwards towards the empty sky. He fell to one knee, barely able to keep afloat using the airwalk technique. "I am impressed," Sato Yasutora. The human with hollow-like powers wearily looked up at Ulquiorra before pushing himself to his feet. "I will protect them," Chad wheezed, out of breath. "And so you have," Ulquiorra confirmed. "You have more than proven how your emotion grants strength when you need it. To think that a human could deflect a high-level Espada's full-power attack, I appear to have underestimated the power of the human spirit. Nevertheless, you are out of power and barely able to stand. How can you protect them now? I don't care how hurt or vulnerable I am. I made a pact with Ichigo, a pact that we would fight for each other and always watch each other's backs. Ever since that day, where he risked his life to help me protect something more precious to me than my own life, Chad steadied himself and got into a fighting stance. I refuse to break that oath, Ulquiorra Schiffer. Not for you, not for anyone. Your teeth are chattering." Soifin's words to Omaeda acquired his attention as he forcibly retook control of his jaws, combating the fear that swelled within him from his first real fight in a long, long time. Before he could speak, though, Soifin continued. "You're pathetic. I can't even stand to look at you. Are you afraid to die? Then this is a good opportunity. Let me handle these two, you go off and die doing something else." What are you talking about? Omaeda stuttered at first, but gained steam quickly. "I'm not scared, I'm not going to run, and I'm definitely not going to die." "Then don't." "I wasn't going to, even without your orders." Several meters away, standing off against the Taicho and Fukutecho, Neutra scoffed. "Your opponent looks like a fat weakling, Tesla." "He does, Neutra-sama. I'm not sure which I would rather fight myself," the Espada mused. "I'm sick and fucking tired of fighting women, but even she promises a better fight than that fat ass. Please allow me to take the weakling, Neutra-sama. I know you despise fighting them most of all, and then you can prove to the woman that they have no place on the battlefield," Tesla reasoned. Neutra seemed to consider, then grinned. "Sounds good. Oi, woman, we gonna fight or what? Impatient, aren't you?" Soifin called out. "Very well." She drew her Zanpakuto and held it in a one-handed reverse grip, so the blade itself extended back towards her elbow. Neutra drew his enormous weapon, and after a brief pause, they lunged at each other in tandem. Neutra's weapon threatened to behead Soifin in her first attack, but she ducked underneath, taking advantage of her short stature to get within Neutra's guard. "You're careless," she mocked as she ripped open Neutra's stomach. Or tried to. Her Zanpakuto dragged across the Espada's skin, creating several sparks, but somehow Neutra remained unharmed. Barely managing to keep her surprise in check, Soifin narrowly evaded Neutra's counterattack through a flash of Shunpo. "Surprised, woman?" Neutra asked with a cocky grin. "I cannot be cut. I have the strongest hierro of all the Espada." "Interesting," Soifin remarked coolly. "If my sword cannot cut you, then my sword and resolve must first be strengthened." She brought her sword up to eye level. "Sting all enemies to death, Suzembaki." Her Zanpakuto glowed yellow, before reshaping itself onto her hand and arm, forming a black gauntlet with gold decorations. Where it ended at her wrist, there was also a golden chain that linked the gauntlet with a thin, stinger-like blade that encompassed her middle finger and extended to twice her finger's length. Neutra stared for a moment before beginning to laugh. "That puny thing is your weapon?" he asked incredulously. His mirth turned in an instant towards anger. "How can you possibly expect to kill me with that tiny blade?" He was shocked, however, when he heard a voice from behind him. "You talk too much." Unable to block in time, he attempted to dodge. As a result, he was stabbed in the left side of his back, and Neutra felt his opponent's blade push slightly into his muscle. Glancing at he had least seen Soifin, he was unsurprised to see the space empty. "You're very fast," he spat out angrily. "How dare she? No stupid woman can just cut me like that without consequences." He very purposely ignored how that very thing had happened countless times before from his former superior. "How were you able to cut me now when you were not before?" he asked, giving his regeneration ability time to work. He was unable to see the butterfly-shaped mark appear on his back. My Zanpakuto's power is condensed into this stinger, and combined with my own skill in Hakuda it allows me to use my specialty, Nijeki Kesatsu. All I must do is pierce my enemy in the same spot twice. The first time creates a very easy to spot target, a homonka. The second kills you. She took a ready stance. With such power concentrated in such a small blade, how could I not cut you? I must admit, however, that your Hiero is quite tough. I nearly wasn't able to push even a little bit of my Zanpakuto's venom into you. For the first time in a long time, Neutra knew fear, a woman who had no respect for her rightful place in life, with the power to kill him so easily. Then his fear turned to anger, then to rage. I'll kill you, he howled as his Reiatsu flared. Pray, Santa Teresa. So this is Resurrection, Soifin observed, carefully keeping all her senses peeled for the inevitable attack from within the smoke-like Reiatsu that hid Neutra from sight. Suddenly she was cut in half from a scythe that whipped out from within the smoke. Neutra was about to laugh out in victory, until he noticed that the Shinigami Taicho was not there any longer, only the Haori that marked her as a Taicho was left, its two halves fluttering down in the currents of air. Recalling Soifin's words, and not willing to chance dying before he could even put up a proper fight, he used his upper left arm and its scythe to block the point where Soifin's strange weapon had touched previously. You are too slow to truly match me, Soifin announced, and Neutra whirled around to see the woman he was quickly growing to loathe standing easily, calmly even, atop a nearby building. You are unable to see past my Jutsusemi technique. You are unable to even catch me with your weapon. And you cannot hurt me with yours. Neutra countered. In my Resurrection, I'm stronger, faster, and far more difficult to cut. I see. Assuming you are right, then we are at an impasse. However, Soifin began gathering her Reiatsu and focusing it to her arm and Zanpakuto. I do not believe you are capable of defeating me. She dashed at the four-armed Arankar, Suzumaki practically buzzing in her ears in its desire to kill. Meanwhile, Omaeda and Tesla had experimentally clashed a few times, sword against sword. Tesla's sword was slightly odd, however, in that it was a relatively short rapier, and had a chakram built into it just above the hilt. Neither opponent had been hurt as of yet, but both had been preoccupied watching their masters fight. Looks like Soifin Taicho is going to kill your Espada, Omaeda taunted, taking advantage of Tesla's distracted state to land a shallow cut to his right arm. For the first time since they entered the fight, Tesla looked somewhat strained and worried. Then it appears I must defeat you more quickly, so I may aid my master. Crush, Veruga. Omaeda watched, impressed as Tesla's sword vanished and he began to grow taller, larger, until he resembled a heavily muscled reddish-brown giant, with a warthog mask, and yellow mane and furred legs. Without waiting for the Shinigami to ready himself, Tesla attempted to crush him with an enormous palm against the ground. The Fukuteicho narrowly dodged. He's slow, but strong, my kind of fight. He gripped his Zanpakuto. Crush, Gegetsuburi. His sword glowed and reshaped itself into a large spike ball on a long chain, looking very similar to a flail. Without hesitation, he hurled it up at Tesla's face, successfully hitting his mask and breaking off the left tusk. Tesla roared in pain. The mask was a hollow's weak point, and that transferred over to even Arankar. Die, he demanded, punching with all his might straight down at Omaeda, who dodged easily. Despite being overweight, Omaeda was still fast enough to evade such a slow punch. Swinging Gegetsuburi above his head by use of his chain, Omaeda leapt up and flung his weapon directly into Tesla's left eye. The giant size of the Frashin ensured that the mosque's eye-hole was large enough to accommodate. Tesla screamed in agony as the spiked ball pierced his eye and destroyed it. Unable to see any longer, he blindly swiped at Omaeda, who barely had to move to dodge as he pulled back on the chain, recalling his Zanpakuto. You fat ass, Tesla insulted, breathing heavily as he tried to regain his calm. How did you do this so easily? I am Onimitsukido, Omaeda intoned gravely. You are simply too slow to hit me, and present too large a target to miss. Focusing his Reiatsu, he used Shunpo to appear directly in front of Tesla and once more threw his Zanpakuto with all his might. Gegetsuburi shattered Tesla's mask, and punched right through his head, killing him instantly. Now to go help Soifin Taicho. Meanwhile, The forces that had not yet squared off against their opponents frowned. They had felt Ichigo's already monstrous Reiatsu grow even higher, and turn very hollow like earlier, but now he seemed to have powered down, and his opponent's Reiatsu was still there. So when Ichigo used Shunpo to appear next to his allies, he was met by frowns and scowls alike. "Why is your opponent not dead, Kurosaki?" Yamamoto demanded. "Grimmjow's not really loyal to Aizen," Ichigo explained quickly. "In exchange for his life, he's agreed to protect Urahara's shop, where Inoue is standing by to heal anyone who needs it." "Not a bad trade, Yama-jii," Hiraku commented lazily. "A hollow protectant that place allows us to save our energy for our fights." "And how have you bound him to that promise?" Hitsugaya queried. "I threatened to sick Ishida on him and destroy his soul entirely after I hunt him down and make him beg for death," the orange-haired wizard answered grimly. Yamamoto's eyes widened somewhat, showing his surprise for a brief moment before returning to his normal posture. "An effective threat, then?" The ice-wielding captain of the 10th Division looked at Ichigo questioningly. "Kurosaki, I understand you became a hollow. Did anything good come of that?" "I gained a couple hollow powers," Ichigo answered Hitsugaya after a moment. "I've only used Garganta, but I should be able to use Sero as well. I did notice my masked state was much stronger than the last time I faced Grimmjow." He jerked bolt upright, sensing a sudden dangerously extreme drop in Reiatsu. Chad. Before anyone could stop him, he was gone. Ulquiorra stood over Chad, with no traces of any wounds on his resurrection form. Chad, on the other hand, was panting for breath, on his hands and knees on a building as blood pooled beneath him. He'd fought hard, despite being drained of Reiatsu, but ultimately to no avail. Ulquiorra was just too fast and too resilient. "Chad, I'm here," Ichigo told him fervently as he kneeled down next to his best friend. "Let's go get you healed up, okay?" "Ichigo, he's strong," Chad whispered, coughing up more blood that joined the pool of blood on the building even as he allowed Ichigo to help him up. "Be careful, his Sero Oscuro is beyond powerful." "Got it." Ichigo Shunpo-ed away with Chad, taking him to Urahara's shop. "Inoue, help Chad, I've gotta get back out there." Inoue snapped to attention and immediately called upon her fairies, silently creating a Soden Kishun field around Chad, who obediently lay down. "You'll be okay, Chad-kun." Ichigo, seeing that everything was taken care of, Shunpo-ed back to where Ulquiorra was waiting. "Here we are again." "Indeed," Ulquiorra agreed. "No chance I can convince you to turn away from Aizen then." "Never got a chance to fight Yami." "No. However, your friend, Sado Yasutora, he has become quite strong. And his Reiatsu is strange, it is as though I can taste his emotions on the air," Ulquiorra told Ichigo. "He surprised me in that he was able to mildly injure me in this form using his most powerful attack and a clever strategy, but my regenerative abilities and high speed kept him from landing more than glancing blows afterwards." "So, now what? You've got what you were looking for, right? A better understanding of a human's emotions," Ichigo pointed out. "Indeed, I have learned much with my interactions with Sado Yasutora. However, there is still more to learn." Ulquiorra took a battle stance. "Come, Kurosaki Ichigo, show me your own will to protect, your own will to attack." "I'll show you more than that," Ichigo promised, reaching up to pull on his Jillian mask once more, continuing to speak as he did so. "I'll show you my instinct." He glared up at Ulquiorra through hollow amber eyes that glowed eerily from within the mask, spinning Tensa Zangetsu by the chain once more as he flared his Reiatsu to its fullest, making Ulquiorra's eyes widen nigh imperceptibly in surprise. "Prepare yourself, Ulquiorra." "As you wish, Kurosaki Ichigo." Suddenly the air was saturated even further with Reiatsu, this time from Ulquiorra, before Ichigo made the first move and dashed forward, a black Getsuga emanating dangerously from his sword. "Let's take him down, Zangetsu." He felt Tensa Zangetsu thrum in his hand, and then he was thrown into combat. Hira Izuru, with the help of Ishida, had Avarama Redder on his knees, his head bowed. Hira calmly walked to the eagle-like Frashin, Wabisuke in his hand. Ishida floated alongside him on a platform based on his Harenkyaku. "How?" Avarama asked as he struggled to move any part of his body. His name suited him, his body was almost completely covered in blood-red feathers. The only parts of his body not covered in plumage were his tattooed chest and his face, upon which a large beak had formed. He had also sprouted enormous wings, and his feet had reshaped into talons. "What did you do to me?" Kira indicated his released Zanpakuto. "My sword, Wabisuke, has a unique ability to double the weight of anything I strike. While Ishida-san fought you in aerial combat, I snuck in and struck those feathers of yours over and over again. If your feathers had been as light as normal feathers, I would have been helpless." Realization dawned upon Avarama's face as everything made sense. "But my feathers are metallic and heavy, made to slice anyone I swoop past. Such an underhanded ability." "Underhanded?" Kira shook his head. "There is nothing underhanded about it. Oh yes, you feel that fighting is meant to be heroic and exciting." "Yes, and to fight makes the blood sing. It is fun, and honorable." Avarama agreed. "There is such a rush of adrenaline, the glee of combat, the triumph of proving yourself stronger. I cannot feel that way. My division, Squad 3 of the Gote 13, has the marigold as our symbol. It embodies despair. War is ugly and depressing. There is nothing exciting about it. We fight to live. War is full of despair, full of sorrow and darkness. People fear war for that reason. Out of all the Zanpakutos there are, I feel that my sword that best represents that philosophy." He held his sword up to the light, showing its strange shape. It was a straight blade up to a point, where it bent to a perpendicular angle, and again several inches later to run parallel to the first part of the blade. The sharp edge was on the inside of the hook-like shape, while the outside was blunted. "Raise your head, Wabisuke. That command is so fitting to my division. When I strike you with my blade, I double your weight, again and again until all you can do is kneel, no longer able to stand. No longer able to even lift your sword. And then Wabisuke's power forces you to bow your head, as if in apology. And that is why it is called Wabisuke, the penitent one." He stood over the helpless Avarama and gently but firmly brought his sword to go around the Fraxian's neck so the inside edge, the sharp edge, was directly against his skin. "Wait," Avarama pleaded. "A warrior does not beg for his life." And with a tug, Kira beheaded the Arankar. "An interesting philosophy," Ishida commented. "Seems to be counter to Squad 11's. "Of course," Kira agreed. "Most squads have their own philosophy. Squad 3's is despair, Squad 2's is efficient dispatch, Squad 11's is the love of fighting. By having contrary philosophies working together, we are able to take in all kinds of shinigami and have them work together." They paused as they felt a heavy, oppressive reiatsu fill the air. "Kurosaki," Ishida recognized. "Kurosaki Ichigo is the owner of this reiatsu?" Kira asked, surprised. "It feels so much like a hollow's." "Yeah, but be prepared for even more," the Quincy warned, looking to where he felt the reiatsu coming from. "He's facing Ulquiorra, Quarta Espada." Then the reiatsu intensified as Ulquiorra released his own reiatsu. Kira nearly had to fall to his knees, as he gasped for breath. Ishida, seeing Kira's impairment, grabbed him and used Harenkyaku to move them both further away. As Kira recovered, Ishida Ryu looked towards his rival once more, struggling with his emotions. "How is it that you're still so much further than me?" He gripped his bow tightly. "You've gotten so strong, Kurosaki Ichigo. And you'll only grow stronger, while I am bound by my vow to give up the life of a Quincy as soon as this conflict is over," he thought bitterly. "No, Ryu, it is good that Kurosaki has grown so strong. That way you can entrust him with the protection of our comrades after all this is done." But no matter how many times he told himself that, Ishida still felt the bitter jealousy circulating, gripping his chest with its icy tendrils. Ayesagawa Yumashika finished off Charlotte Coolhorn's Resurrection with the true form of his Shikai, Ruriiro Kujaku, from within the Arankar's Rosa Blanca technique. Ruriiro Kujaku manifested as several vines that wrapped around the opponent and drained the captive's reiatsu, using it to make several flowers slowly bloom. "I have to thank you again, Charlotte Coolhorn," Yumashika commented easily. "Without your Rosa Blanca technique to hide us from all sight and reiatsu sensing, I would not have revealed my true Shikai." "Why didn't you use it outside?" Charlotte asked, defeated. His Resurrection had changed his clothing primarily, giving him white underwear that connected to a pink mini skirt, and a white crop top with extended shoulder pads, which had a pink cape. His bone mask had reformed into a tiara which settled just in front of his curly hair that he wore down to mid-back, and he wore white disc-like bracelets. Given Charlotte's muscular frame, he had the form of a very masculine bodybuilder, all his muscles clearly defined. He looked like an especially disturbing cross-dresser. The Shinigami paused for a moment to reflect before answering. I am a proud member of Squad 11, and that squad prides themselves on having pure melee Zanpakuto. Having a Kido type, like my own, would get me kicked out. So I disguised my Zanpakuto by giving it a nickname. You see, my Zanpakuto's favorite color is azure, Ruriiro, and its least favorite is wisteria, Fuji. By calling him Fuji Kujaku, he pouts and doesn't show his true power, instead manifesting as what you saw earlier, 4 identical sickle-like blades held on a hinge at the hilt. Charlotte smiled. I see now, your Zanpakuto is beautiful, in both its forms. Yumashika repressed a shiver. While he freely admitted he liked feeling beautiful, and he personally felt that Ruriiro Kujaku was equally so, having Charlotte compliment them felt like the cross-dressing Arankar was hitting on him. Yes he is, he agreed, watching the flowers attached to his Zanpakuto's vines slowly bloom, draining Charlotte's energy. And now, die in your own technique. With that, the flowers fully bloomed, and Charlotte slumped over, dead from having all his Reiatsu drained. He quickly began to disintegrate, until the fraction was gone. Yumashika quickly resealed his Zanpakuto before the Rosa Blanca completely faded, thereby hiding Ruriiro Kujaku's true nature. It's about time you got out of there, he heard. Turning around, he found Kuchiki Rukia waiting impatiently. I came to help, but couldn't break into whatever that technique was. Is your opponent dead? Yumashika glanced backwards at where Charlotte had died. Yes, he died a beautiful death. Rukia shook her head. She'd never understand Yumashika and his obsession with beauty. Never mind that, we should take turns protecting the pillar. Sounds lovely. How has everyone else done? He glanced around. It seemed that Kira had finished, as had Hisagi. Renji appeared to be finishing off Akaku's opponent, who was presumably in Resurrection judging from the enormous whale-like form. Even as Yumashika watched, Hahio Zabumaru unleashed a Higa Zeko, disassembling into its segments, which leapt at the Arankar and stabbed him in several places, including his head. Seeing that the fraction was finished, he looked for and found Akaku, who appeared to be heavily injured, nearly unconscious. While he was annoyed on Akaku's behalf that Renji had taken over his fight, Yumashika was glad that his friend was alive. Glancing towards the other 2 towers, Yumashika noted that Kira had teamed up with the Quincy, Ishida Ryu, and seemed uninjured from his fight. Hisagi and Matsumoto looked as though they had finished a few minutes prior. With a flash of Shunpo, Yumashika appeared next to Akaku. You still alive there? Akaku coughed out some blood. Yeah, I'm alive. Remind me to kick Renji's ass later. Right, Yumashika agreed, pulling Akaku up and supporting him as best he could. You should take him to Urahara's shop, Rukia suggested. Inoe's there, and her special healing ability will get him fixed up in no time. Thanking her for the suggestion, Yumashika took his comrade down to the shop. That taken care of, Rukia met up with Renji, who had resealed his Zanpakuto back into Shikai form. You all right there, Renji? I'm fine, not even injured, Renji reassured her. My opponent was strong, but slow. He looked his childhood friend over real quick, assessing her Reiatsu and looking for potential injuries. You didn't fight at all. No, Yumashika was trapped in some technique that kept him and his enemy isolated from the outside. I couldn't break in. Rukia looked worriedly in the direction that she felt Ichigo's hollowified Reiatsu coming from. Do you know who he's fighting? Ichigo. Renji shook his head. Can't tell for sure, but I'll bet you anything it's an Espada. The ice wielder rolled her eyes. Of course he is, dumbass. I could tell that simply from the Reiatsu. Renji smirked. He can take care of himself. Listen, I've got to stay here and continue to defend Akaku's pillar while he recovers. The others have returned to theirs, but until Yumashika gets back you should watch over his. Rukia's face hardened as she nodded, before turning and running back to the appropriate tower, taking on a guarding position. Barrigan's face was a reflection of utter fury as his left hand crushed part of his bone throne. Oh shit, one of his remaining fraction cursed with wide eyes, sensing Barrigan's rising Reiatsu. Sire, Please remain in your throne and allow us to handle them. The other begged. Baragon paused, but he regained his calm expression as he once more sat back. Kill them. Do not leave a single ant alive, or there will be nowhere for you to return to. He gave his subordinates a piercing, judgmental stare. Do not disappoint me, he uttered with the weight of a dictator. It did not need to be said that if they did disappoint him, Baragon would kill his Frashin himself. Apache, Sun, Mila rose, Harabel suddenly called out. 3 more Arrancar, presumably her Frashin, rushed to her side. Attempt to destroy the towers yourselves, but do not interfere with Baragon's Frashin's battles. Yes ma'am. They saluted, and in tandem all 5 Frashin vanished in a burst of sonido. Should we send a Taicho along to help out? Yukatake suggested. Just in case, of course. Who would we send to fight them? Yamamoto asked heavily. He wanted to reserve his heavy hitters, Yukatake, Kyoraku, Komamura and himself, for the Espada, as well as their Shinigami masters. Komamura understandably wanted to save his strength for fighting his old friend, the traitor Tusen, and it was likely that Hisagi would abandon his post to aid him. Hira would most likely want to fight his old Taicho as well, Ichimaru. Yamamoto's attention was split between watching the Arrancar before him, maintaining the fire that separated Aizen, Tusen and Jin from their subordinates, and keeping tabs on Kurosaki Ichigo's fight with Ulquiorra. Speaking of Kurosaki, he hoped that the substitute Shinigami was capable of finishing the Quarta Espada and still be able to take on Aizen. I think we should let the towers, defenders take care of themselves, Kyoraku offered lazily. Like you said, Yama-jii, they are strong warriors, and they have backup now. I don't think we're going to get a choice, Hitsugaya said grimly, eyeing the Espada. Indeed, they were readying themselves for combat. It appeared that everyone save Baragon was moving to draw their weapons, or simply raising their Reiatsu in challenge. The tower defenders will have to take care of themselves, Komamura growled dangerously, drawing his own sword. However, just as they were about to split up to fight their battles, everyone stopped when they felt an overwhelming Reiatsu wash over them from the direction of Ichigo's battle with Ulquiorra. The roar of a hollow echoed in the sudden silence. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to like, comment and subscribe, as well as checking out the author on fanfiction.net.